Call the meeting to order. It is December the 16th, 6:30 p.m. This is the Rockford Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will start with board roll call. Jessica Johnson.
Here.
Eric Gordy.
Here.
Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Brady Anderson.
Here.
Beth Prescott is here. And Amy Edwards is here. We have a quorum. I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second motion.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Pending no further discussion, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Agenda approved. At this time, I will call upon Cher Tishner, our business office manager, to present the annual Truth in Taxation hearing. Thank you, Cher. And I believe you're going to present, correct?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Can you grab the light? Okay, every year we have to do truth in taxation for our levy. If anybody has any questions, there's yellow forms in the back that you can fill out and give to Mrs. Ellers. And if you could just give those to her at the end of the presentation, I'll answer any questions then. So Minnesota's truth in taxation law requires that cities, counties, school districts follow certain steps before adopting a tax levy for each year. The laws require a mailed notice to each property owner in the county, which describes the tax levies produced by the county, city, county, and school district, whether they increase or decrease. That is sent out by the county, usually the end of October or November. And then school districts are required to hold a single meeting in which the public is allowed to speak and the budget and levy are discussed, and that's what we're doing tonight. The meeting and the date and location must be provided at the same time or prior to certifying the levy. And it must be certified, or the meeting must be done between November 24th and December 30th. Due process, or discuss proposed property tax for levy, payable 2020. Provide and discuss information on the current budget, which is school year 1920, and opportunity for the public comment and questions. Points to remember. Revenue formulas are set by the state legislature, except for voter-approved referendums. And the local levy and state aid mix are set by the state legislature. An increase in local taxes does not necessarily mean an increase in revenue for the school district. So, for some of the newer board members, here is the levy. It's 40 pages. And there's a bunch of different revenues that we get for different things. It's not all just general. It's all general ed, but there's a whole bunch of different things in there. It's compensatory, it's gifted and talented, and all makes that up. And each and every single different revenue has a different formula set by what we're talking about up here, state legislature. And then they go and they do a second formula, which is your local levy and your state aid mix. So then they'll decide for each and every different revenue how much, depending upon the counties, is going to get levy and how much they're going to give us for state aid. So it's a ratio. The timeline for this is in July and August, school districts provide the budget and enrollment information to MDE. In September, the board certifies the preliminary levy. November, the county mails the notices. December is the public hearing, and the board certifies the final levy. And that is going to be collected in calendar year 2020 for our fiscal year 2021. Current school year budget. All schools are, funds are divided into different funds by law. We have the general fund, which is basically all the operating of our school. There's a whole bunch of different things listed there. If you have any questions, you can let me know. Food service is anything involving food service, anything involving our lunch program, breakfast program. Community Service Fund 4 is anything involving community service, community education. And debt service is our district's outstanding bonded indebtedness. It goes by our debt schedule every year, and that is currently for our bonds issued for our elementary school and improvements to the middle school and the high school. And this budget is our revenues, which was approved by the board in June. And this is just a comparison for the revenues between actual 18-19 and then the budget for 19-20. The increase was 6.51%. And this just gives it a different view. You can see the biggest percent of our revenues comes from state aid. This is our expenditures, 18-19 actual, 19-20 budget. Difference of 4.25%. And this just breaks it down and lets you know where our dollars are being spent out of our general fund. The least amount, 7.7%, is fiscal and other, which is our liability insurance. And then it goes vocational all the way up to regular instruction at the bottom, which is our K through 12 teaching, anything involved with teaching and instruction, 42%. And another view, as you can see, the biggest portion is salary and benefits. Next is purchase services, which is any of our contracted services, travel and conferences, utilities, marketing, legal, supplies, materials, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and what we are certifying is 19 payable 2020, certified in 2019, which we're doing now, collected in the calendar year 2020, and again, like I said before, recognized in 2021. Authorities for school levies. The school tax dollar levy must either be set by state formula or voter approved. And then what are the main variables that can cause property tax increase and decrease? Issues that are driven by legislature are a change in sales ratios, change in tax capacity, or a change in property tax credits. Issues determined by district voters are voter-approved building bonds or voter-approved referendums. And continued here, local factors would be school board actions, property improvements not previously taxed, change in individual assessed market value, or a change in a property classification. And how will the taxes be spent in 2020? It just breaks it down between the funds. General fund 44%, community ed 2%, and debt service 54%. This is our actual levy paid from 18 to 19, proposed 19-20. The difference is an increase of 1.43. So then we are asking the board to certify the levy for $7.8 million. And if you have any questions regarding your property values or classifications, there's the numbers for Wright County or Hennepin County. Questions?
You have questions, Jessica?
Not really much of a question, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but can you go back just one?
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify for everyone, the debt services there is in regards, like you had said, to the bond for the buildings that we passed in 12.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that amount is. So that's still coming in from
We have-
taxpayers.
Yes.
Do we still have some from the elementary prior to that too? Or no?
Thought I brought the bond schedule with. We have 3 outstanding right now.
Okay.
Here it is. One that was taken out in 2013, building bond, and I'm not sure, I don't have a history on that, which building it was. And then we have a 2015 that we refinanced from 2000.
Okay, that's another two.
And then we have a capital facilities bond that was done in 2010.
Okay.
And they go anywhere between, right now, they're gonna be ending in 2023, one of them, 2025, and 2029.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you, Cher. Well done and well presented, and I don't believe that we had any goldenrod papers from, not goldenrod, yellow requests from the public, so at this point in time then, we will move on to our next agenda item. Again, thank you, Cher. I know it's a lot to put all of these reports together, so, and you do it in a very nice way, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to recognition. Steve?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Recognitions. This month, we'd like to recognize a few of our outstanding students. From Reams, we'd like to recognize Kaylee Griffiths, who was selected to perform in the Nutcracker at the Orpheum. We're so proud of her in representing Rockford area schools on the big stage. So congratulations to Kaylee. The honors band at Rockford Middle School Center of Environmental Studies would like to recognize 4 8th grade students who are members of the Central Minnesota Band Directors Association's honors band. That's a mouthful. This distinctive honor is due to their hard work and dedication to being the best they can be, not only in band, but in all they do. So congratulations to Chase Evans, who plays the tuba, Elise Didier, who plays the trumpet, Sarah Buchholz, who plays the baritones, and Ariane Rayler, who plays the flute. These students will be taking part in a performance scheduled on Saturday, January 11th at Elk River High School. Rockford High School would like to recognize the cast, crew, and the pit of State Fair the Musical. The production featured students in grades 5 through 12, and over 80 students made up the cast, the crew, and the pit orchestra. And last, Coach of the Year. Rockford Area Schools Athletic Department would like to recognize Jen Milton for being named Region 5AA Volleyball Coach of the Year. Jen was being very secretive about this award to allow her assistant coach, Lynette Schultz, to get the praise that she deserved for all of her input into our team's success. But the top coaches, they do step away from praise to allow their players and their coaching staff to be in the limelight. So congratulations to our head coach, Jen, for being selected as 5AA Volleyball Head Coach of the Year.
Wow. Any comments or questions for Rhonda? Talented individuals in our district for sure. One of my favorite parts of the board meeting. Thank you. Next, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is public comments. As per routine, I will read the official statement regarding public comment portion of the school board. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the Rockford Area School District to address the school board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to one 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of the regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear comments from community members. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student matters even without naming the student in open session. This includes the public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board respects and values input on student matters, but when it relates to a specific student or to a specific student matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. At this time, I will ask Kathy, do we have any public comments submitted? All right. There are no public comments requested, so at this time we will move on to our next agenda item. The next agenda item is our consent items. At this point in time, I would take a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any further comments? All right, pending no further comment, I will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda passes. All right, next I'll call upon our principals. First one is the elementary principals report. Brenda.
Good evening, everybody. I have no microphone.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not usually quiet either. Better?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's on. Basically, we've been in concert season this month, and it's just been one after another, and it's really a lot of fun. And it's fun to see our kids shine and really step up. Like I wrote in my last article, this is their first opportunity to really start into public speaking, and that starts at kindergarten. Last Friday we had our kindergarten concert, and it's amazing how many of them say to me, I'm so nervous. And after they get done, they had so much fun, and that is the start. And then we do, small group presentations in the classroom where parents get to come in, and it's all a process. It's more than just that public show for mom and dad. It is a process of that biggest fear, which is public speaking. However, that's not what I'm going to talk with you about tonight. But like I said, that is the biggest thing that we've been working on this month, obviously, in terms of just our highlighted areas. But something that some of you are familiar with on the board, and some of you may not be, but I think it's important to talk about is we do staff meetings on Tuesday mornings. We used to do 2 a month, and then we dropped it back to 1 a month. Just trying to be respectful of teacher time and how can we get more staff development in. Staff development is something that is very few and far between in this district and a lot of districts. It's really hard to find full days. We've done those late starts, we've done a lot of things like that, but sat down, I think it was my second year here, and said, how do we really start to give some teachers, just even if it's a nugget that they can take away and put back in their classroom of that day. So we do something called staff enrichments. Rarely run by me. They are run by the experts in our building, and that is our reading folks, that is our arts magnet coordinator. It's just a lot of those people that are running these enrichments, and they're giving staff development time to really work on honing their skills. I'll give you an example. We just had 3 teachers that were trained in Orton Gillingham. We've had lots of conversations at the board level about this. We've talked a lot about some of our students struggling with dyslexia. And so we've had those folks come in and give our staff nuggets of, here's what you can do with your students. Here's another thing, here's another tool in your toolbox, here's another one, here's another one. We have new arts standards this year. We've met in as a staff and been broken into groups and talked about what would you do in your classroom with those arts standards and what would you do to infuse in a specific area. It just gives them time. Our time in the morning isn't a lot. It's a half hour to 35 minutes, but it's those little nuggets that hopefully they have takeaways, and it's just one of those more in-depth things that, like I said, we know what we're doing in our building, but you might not. And so those of you that have been on staff have been part of that, and Beth used to run some of our staff enrichments, as our reading person, but it continues, and like I said, we really try to use those experts in the building and give them an opportunity to be leaders and to step up and share their wisdom. We work a lot on press in our building. We have teachers who share out and say, this is what I do with this intervention. What about you? And they learn from each other. So it's a time where, once again, we're bound and tied to meetings, but yet at the same time I think it's beneficial for our teachers, and we try to make it happen in that area that they're feeling a need. And so that's how they're geared every year, is what are you looking for, what do you need. On the year that we're on a review and reflection, where Northwest Suburban is coming in and really working with us, we tend to spend a little more time in the arts. It just depends on what we're really working towards. So that's my report tonight. Like I said, I wanted you to know that kind of a little nugget that we utilize in our building, and something that I really appreciate the experts in our building and what they share.
Thank you. Any questions for Brenda?
So we had a question, Brenda. You had mentioned, and I don't want to go too deep down a path here, so maybe just a general overview.
Okay.
When it comes to staff enrichment, you had mentioned training around Orton Gillingham. I think a couple of people went to that training. And last month, I think it was, we had a number of the public during Dyslexia Awareness Month talk about some of the challenges these students face in the day-to-day world. How do we kind of take that training that we've received and when doing these staff enrichment and I don't know, operationalize it, for lack of a better term, to support these students? Kind of, how does that work? Does that make sense? Like, how do we take it, spread it, use it to the benefit of these students that deal with it on a day-to-day basis?
I think that's exactly what we're doing every day. The biggest thing is, as you know, everybody in their classroom really looks to each child and individualizes instruction, tiered instruction, layered instruction, and for some of those kids, it really is, okay, if they're doing what they call their daily 5 structure, and you may be aware and may not be aware of how that looks in reading. So they're working on 4 different areas. The students are individually, and the teacher is working with a guided reading group. That teacher might be working in a guided group with students that are struggling in reading or are struggling with those dyslexia characteristics. Jennifer, I'm going to point to you. Jennifer is one of our reading specialists. She works very individualized with them, so we have some pull-out services as well. Our I team, which is our intervention team, really looks to those students, and we're working with parents. A lot of those parents that were here are very aware that we've had people trained in Orton Gillingham and how we're working with their children. It's not a hidden secret. We are sharing that out through phone calls, through conversations, through it's not mass media, I guess, but
Right, sure.
it's where it's necessary, I think.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next, middle school principals report. Bobby. Oh, geez. She's got some great data. Great data again. This is a theme.
I'm the same.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, I want to talk to you about grading, if I may. Not a lot coming up on the middle school agenda. Conferences are our next big thing every Tuesday, starting with 5th grade when we return from break. But what you're going to start hearing about, we're doing the power standards. We've been working on grades for some time. I have not put one back there.
Thank you.
So if you are not aware, the middle school runs 2 grading systems. Our 5th and 6th grade runs the same standards-based grading system that our elementary runs. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4 point grading scale. Am I not being heard?
I don't think it's on.
It's green. Is that green for
No,
both?
it's not on. The light's not on, so. It's just doing what it always
It's a bad
does.
one.
I don't usually have a problem being heard.
It's not.
We just want to make sure
This
everybody.
is like my nightmare come true right here. Hello?
There you go.
Yeah, then
dear.
we gotta make sure everybody knows I'm short. Is it low enough, Kathy? We covered everyone? Okay.
Sorry.
No, we're good, we're good. Okay. And then in our 7th and 8th grade, we have traditional letter grades, as we do in our high school. So we split the middle between both levels, and it's not a grade system for the middle school. So that means we have to run 2 separate systems in Infinite Campus. It also means it's kind of an awkward place to jump into letter grades. Kids don't really understand it well. Parents do, they get letter grades. They have more trouble with standards-based grading. The biggest problem for us is with kids. The number one job for grades is to communicate how kids are doing, both primarily for the kids themselves and for their families. And so there's an example of traditional grading on the front sheet. And these are not mine. I've stolen them from the internet, but their sources are on the page. So the first example is Johnny. Johnny is a very typical middle school kid. Doesn't care much for homework. Doesn't give his best work on quizzes, especially pop quizzes. Johnny obviously knows the material, right? I did the math for you. Strong A minus, but then very good work on projects and papers when he does them, right? And so overall, barely hanging on to a C. But when you look at, does Johnny know the information in testing, right? And the projects and papers that he does, obviously knows the information. And so this form of grading isn't doing a great job communicating what Johnny no one can do, right? Susie, on the other hand, does her best work, A minus, B plus student, totals it up at the end, all those points are worth a nice B plus, teacher's gonna give her an A minus because she's a good kid, right? And that happens all the time. Not great information regarding what she can know, what she knows and can do. And that's the problem. So that's the problem with letter grades. The problem with the 1 through 4 in our 5th and 6th grade is it's not enough information for middle school kids. The 4 is really hard to attain for kids. That's perfection. So then the next highest grade is 3, and a 3 has to be almost a 4, but also almost a 2, which isn't a real strong score. And so it provides very little information for middle school families. And so the proposal that you're going to hear, and I believe it will have to come through the board, is to go to one grading system in the middle school, 0 to 8. Coincidentally, it's also the grading system that is going to be adopted at the high school. Hence, we'll be doing our job in preparing middle school kids for the high school. The second page is just some information, very general information regarding criteria and related grading. It just basically means that we're going to be grading kids using criteria. Go figure. Basically rubrics. IB is very rubric heavy, saying, hey kids, if you want to get this score, this is what you have to do. If you want this score, this is what you have to do. And it's very easy then for students to understand where they are, for teachers to understand where they are, for parents to understand where they are. And so there's things like, if you read through the 4th one, evidence of achievement according to criteria versus throwing in extra things for penalties, throwing extra things in for extra credit, right? Formative practice with feedback, recording scores after lots and lots of practice, report missing and incomplete scores with in a different way so it doesn't lower the overall achievement. My favorite is the bottom. Final grade represents the most recent consistent performance against criteria. And the one above it's important too. We don't teach it, then leave it. We teach it, we go to something else, we come back to it, we go to something else, come back to both of them. That's called spiraling, right? And so kids master concepts, we keep coming back to it. Next page is probably a overgeneralized understanding of the 0 to 8. But in 3 areas, transfer, problem solving, critical judgment, you can see on the 1 to 2 range, really familiar skills, in familiar setting and context, when you're trying to teach a kid a skill, lots of extra help from the teachers, right, guidance, having them recall information or state really surface level information, moving all the way down to the bottom. asking kids to take what they know and apply it to unfamiliar context, that 7-8 range really requires kids to do extra, something above and beyond, information that they know into an additional context, challenging questions, upper levels of Bloom's, right? Analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating. The next sheet I give you, lots of verbs. So in different skills, same thing along the left side. Different scores from 1 to 8. The frequency, right? If a student is seldom completing a task versus consistently completing a task, how that might look different. And this is a great tool. This is my favorite sheet. This is going to be a really important resource for kids, or for teachers when they're writing the rubrics. And to be able to use the verbs, be able to know what they're looking for. And that's going to be the heavy lift for my staff. My 5th and 6th grade teachers who have experience with standards-based grading, easier for them, but the standard is changing, right? The grading scale is changing. And so what does it mean to have a 7-8 versus having a 3-4, right? What does that look like? And rebuilding rubrics for all the power standards. So the timing is really good for us because we're choosing power standards. Hey, nice. Now let's build rubrics so that we know what they look like, right? And last but not least is an example of what it would look like for standards-based grading on the same scale. And so Johnny, on Criterion A, and this is not broken up like a traditional grade book. Traditional grade book has quizzes, right, tests, projects. This is based up on the criterion, or a standard. So this standard, and everything they do under that standard, the next standard, what they do, and the scores, you'll notice the current score is not indicated, right? So it's not going to be an average, it's going to be how they perform most recently. That's going to be the score that they get. So it's always the basketball reference, right? If I'm practicing free throws, you're not going to include the practice in my free throw percentage. You're going to include what I'm doing in a game, right? And so it's the same kind of theory. And you can see Johnny under Criterion A started off with a 5, practicing, getting better, 6, had 7s. So Johnny's probably going to get a 7, maybe an 8, we'll see. But there's evidence for that. That's what Johnny is doing over time, right? So we are very fortunate on the 21st, our next late start in January, to have Carol Nielsen, right? Who the high school has been working with and really has enjoyed and learned a lot from, is coming to our staff on that morning to do a presentation regarding standards-based grading, specifically the 0 to 8 scale and how that might work. And coincidentally, some of the high school staff is going to come over and make dual use of that, and then she's going to stay and work with the high school staff. So it's going to be a very good opportunity for the staff to learn.
Kevin.
So, just being in the district for a long time, I understand that a number of staff, our teachers, use extra credit right now. Or they use, turning the assignment late, we dock you 15% right of the way. Does all that go away?
It already has at the middle school. And that's because my first year here, 2 years ago, when we started the Ken O'Connor book, the 15 Fixes book, that's something that we presented to the entire district staff, the teaching staff, and then again last year my staff really worked on it in departments, and they've really taken that on themselves and really kind of had a year to play with some of those strategies and that philosophy, and have kind of gotten there themselves to try, okay, what's going to happen if I don't give points for formative assessments? What's going to happen to their grades? You know, they have to prove it to themselves, basically. Extra credit was an easy one. Really, extra credit should be if, you know, Johnny's getting 7s and 8s, and I can't decide between the two, if he should get a 7 or an 8, extra credit should help me make that decision. Do this for me, Johnny. If he works at an 8, he gets an 8. If he does it at a 7, he gets a 7. That's what extra credit should be for. And so my staff has redesigned their grade book as much as possible, and that's going to be a big deal for John too, because he's going to have to change all that out in Infinite Campus for us, and so we're going to leave the school year with all of that ready for him. That's on the docket as well. So, but yeah, that stuff has pretty much been cleaned up. Kids are taking retake tests with added work in between, which is my favorite thing. So if they don't do well on a summative assessment, they have to have more instruction. They have to have more time, or they have to have, right? They have to learn a different way.
So it's related work that's going to help you. If you do this,
Absolutely.
you're going to probably do better on it.
Absolutely. And then the assessment occurs in a different way as well. So we have to make sure that they're getting it.
I'm excited about that. I love the idea that we're. Someone said to me, unrelated, and this isn't supposed to. This, I'll just say the comment of this person was helping people get ready for college and different things on that, and said one of the things I'm concerned about, as he's worked with some students at Rockford, has been the GPA isn't reflective on some of the test scores or spots. So the closer we can get to really measuring their understanding,
Right.
The better we get at that, the more excited I get on
Right.
it. So.
And that's not the fault of our teaching staff. That's the way we
No.
were taught, you know. And that's just throw a bunch of stuff at kids and average all the points and call it a grade. And it's completely backward. The whole system is backward. And unfortunately, and I'm not a high school teacher, or a high school principal, so it doesn't. I don't feel the pressure. I don't have transcripts. I don't have colleges to answer to. So the middle school can be standards-based grading. I don't have any of that stuff, those hoops to jump through. So we can very easily do what's best for kids. The high school's going to have to deal with, okay, how does it transfer into a letter grade for such and such a college? That doesn't, I'm fortunate that that's not a barrier for me. So we can just plow through and, get kids ready for the 0 to 8 part of it. And then we have to figure out, okay, how are we going to teach them about letter grades too when we don't use them? So that's going to be interesting.
Do you, as a middle school person and maybe run as high school as well, do you see colleges having that conversation at all? As more districts tend to do standards-based stuff, or universities or post-secondary educators recognizing some of that, or does it still come to a 4.0 system?
Bobby, do you want to answer that? Or do you want-
Well, I think colleges are still looking at mostly the 4-point scale. I do know Jill is in the audience, and so she might be able to speak a little bit more to it, but our colleges tend to lean to the traditional scale. It's true.
And I think that's because they have to be able to compare students from
Yeah, for sure.
districts, across districts. But.
So you're going to come with a desire to do this next year?
We are going to be, I'm going to come back to you and let you work through it probably twice, sounds like. And hopefully approve it for us. And we'd like to have it in place for next fall.
So by fall, you would have the rubrics established and everything? That's your plan?
Hopefully, yes.
Wow. And then my assumption, and I just want to clarify, is the students would have these rubrics in their hand, and that's how they would get those. They'd be making their kind of destinies in their own hands.
Right.
Okay. And then, please help me understand, how is this modified then for students on an IEP?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the first step is really kind of already in place, where our students have standards-based IEPs, right? And so the work that we've done to choose power standards and then to share power standards out with everyone has really kind of progressed that along. So the hardest part of that's already done. And the fun part is special ed teachers are the ones that are great at this. They know how to do this because they're the ones that gather data constantly and have to present constantly on what kids really are able to do with the goals that they have to keep track of for kids. And so I think this is just going to I think it's going to be much smoother, to be honest with you. It's going to be much more meaningful. I think it's going to it's going to work the same way as a letter grade, but carry a lot more weight.
Well, and hopefully it'll help with that equity gap with, because oftentimes
Agreed.
what happens is students on an IEP don't have access to the grade level content that they
Right.
want. So I think this system is, I agree with you as far as the special ed or the IEP,
Right.
that it will give them, it'll be much more equitable in the access that they have.
And our students who are on IEPs, almost all of them have access to grade level standards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Anyone else?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Great, next, on to the high school principal's report. Rhonda.
Sure, I think we have some kids hovering outside.
so.
The high school kids are going to do a presentation here shortly. But just to follow up a little bit on the middle school presentation, we're all kind of rowing in the same direction as it relates to grading, because as Bobby had indicated, or Miss Anderson-Hume had indicated, the high school is also moving towards a 8-point scale, and we'll learn a little bit more about that as we travel down our IB path. But getting back to my report, because I know the kids are outside, just a couple things. I have a graduation update for the board. If you do have a senior this year, they should have come home with cap and gown information last week, because we are going with a new company this year. We've had the same company for years and years, but we're going with a new company called National Recognition Products. They're out of Becker, Minnesota. Our regional account manager is a Rockford graduate by the name of Ben Pinote. I don't know if anyone... Pinote. Pinote. Petnote. We're real pleased with, so far, the customer service and the quality of their product. In terms of the customer service, he's been here several times now throughout the fall, and now over the past few weeks. He works directly with our students in terms of ordering their caps and gowns. Things like class rings are coming back. They kind of went dormant for a while there, but they're coming back. He actually facilitates the senior meetings. He worked with our kids to design their own senior announcements this year, so the kids are really jazzed up about what they're doing as it relates to their graduation. And as I stated before, the quality of the product we're seeing is a little bit better quality. I mean, the gowns themselves feel a little better. Mm-hmm. So we're going to try this. There's no long-term commitment with this company. And again, Rockford grad, so he's been trying to work with us for several years now. My second item has to do with our homework help. So the high school just started a homework help evening. It's going to be every Wednesday from 3 to 4:15 in our media center. It's an opportunity for students to stay after school and just get some extra help. We have a club called Educators Rising, which is a club for students interested in being a teacher or that type of profession, whether it's a training. But we probably have 30 kids in the club. But one of the things that they wanted to do was actually provide homework help. And so we did it for the first time. We had our first session last Wednesday, and oh my goodness, we had 49 students show up for homework help. Several of them were taking tests. We are focusing on relearning and retake, similar to the middle school. And so about 19 students stayed after to retake an exam that they needed some work on. But we had no idea that so many students would stay after school on a Wednesday afternoon to get homework help. Now, we are going into a break, and we've only had the one week. We are going into a break. Of course, Friday is our break, so we don't necessarily know if last week is representation of how it's going to look moving forward. Not sure if that's going to be a good baseline, because we are moving into a break. Many of our staff tend to have, unit tests, chapter tests before a long break. So don't know if that's going to be the norm in terms of our numbers. And even after the first of the year, when we come back, we have 2 weeks before the end of the semester. And so again, not even sure if those 2 weeks are going to be if that's going to be a norm, because again, going into finals week. But we're excited about it. We have a partnership with Maple Hill, that they are providing transportation for our students who live in Maple Hill, and that's always been a barrier for some of our kids by not having that after-school transportation. And so we'll see where it goes. We're piloting it. It's 1 day a week. Again, our Educator Riser students are helping tutor, And we do have some staff who have volunteered to go in and be with the kids after school. So again, it's in line with the guided study that we piloted last year. We're just trying to provide those safety nets and create that net for kids, because as we roll in IB and the rigor starts to kind of ratchet up, we want to make sure we have the systems in place to make sure that our kids are successful.
That's awesome.
Any questions?
It's awesome.
Okay. Well, I know the kids are here to talk a little bit about, well, I don't want to tell you what they're going to talk about. Chair Edwards had asked that you guys can come on in and get set up. Chair Edwards has asked that we reinstitute having a monthly focus, rotating between the 3 buildings, bringing our kids in, share a little bit about their experience versus hearing the principals and the directors talk about our kids in third person. Figured we'd bring them in firsthand. And so the high school will start the rotation, and then next month there'll be another, I think the middle school's up for next month, and the following month it'll be elementary, and then we'll rotate again. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Carolyn Young. And maybe you can kind of catch the theme of what our presentation will be about. Ms. Young?
They'll move, they're used to it.
We're used to it, yeah.
That's gonna make this hard. Henry Holloway. You could jump the dinosaur on the thing.
Dinosaurs and the pterodactyls.
There's a microphone for the kids to speak into.
I'm just here to bump the button. Stand thusly-ish. Ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'm Grace. I'm here to talk about theater. And how great it is. It's pretty great. I've been doing theater stuff since I was in 2nd grade, so it's basically in my entire life. I've done it forever. Theater really helps you learn about being a performer, and it teaches you to speak in front of crowds. When I was little, I never would have been able to talk in front of you people. Yeah. Theater helped me grow from a shy person where I was always hiding behind other people into a person who could speak freely in front of other people and stand up in front of big crowds. It's just really helped my self-confidence, and I've made an incredible amount of friends through theater that I never would have made before, and it's just great. Yeah. Theater is a great outlet that is very different from most other sports. Instead of tackling people and trying to win a game, you're working together and you're just doing something that you know will make others happy while they watch it. And it's just such a cool community that comes together because you have people coming from football, from band, from wrestling, from volleyball, everyone just coming together, and it's just an amazingly cool group of people that you never thought would become friends.
Alright, so hi, I'm Maddie. If you haven't seen me around, I'm sure you have. Anyway, I started theater when I was in 7th grade, and I was just this little kid, and I had my long hair and my braces, and I walked into Miss Peel's room and with my little ukulele, and I was like, hi, I want to be in Shrek Jr. And I was just this little kid. I really was just this little kid, and I was totally not expecting to love theater as much as I did. I was kind of expecting it to be a one-time thing, something that would just kind of, help me make a couple new friends. Theater really has made me into a different person because I literally cannot imagine myself without the musical. I cannot imagine who I would be without theater in my life. I cannot imagine who I would be without having taken that first step. When you're an actor, it's so different from when you're playing a sport, like Grace said. You are having to take these constant notes, these constant critiques, while you're also trying to memorize lines, music, where you're supposed to stand and when you're supposed to enter the stage and when. It's a very complicated set of motions that all comes together all at once, and it looks so effortless on stage. But I assure you, it very much is not. We had so many late nights, so many. We were here until 7 o'clock the week before our shows, 4 nights a week. And we were just working our butts off, really trying to perfect the show because Young knows how complicated this show was and how many moving parts there was. We were trying to move these stage pieces on, and we maybe had 30 seconds to do it, maybe. And we're having to build these complete sets from nothing. And like I said, when I was in 7th grade, I was little, no confidence, whatever. And now I'm able to get up and talk in front of you guys. I am able to sing in front of a crowd of 400 consistently. I am able to find my voice with a group of people who continuously support me even after the musical is over. And with this role this year, I was a Broadway singer. I was someone who was confident, someone who had to constantly just put on this brave face, this fake face, a wig, perhaps. And I never would have thought myself to be that. I never would have imagined myself to be a blonde, first of all, but I also never would have imagined me to have the confidence of that Broadway singer. And like I said earlier, these shows really are a lot of work. We put a lot of effort into the costuming, a lot of effort into the set design, a lot of effort into memorizing our lines, our music, our choreo, and it really is, I think, the realest magic I have ever experienced. So.
Nice.
I'm Kat, and I've been doing theater since 7th grade, and that's around the same time I started practicing to be backstage, because unlike these two, I'm actually backstage. I'm a stage manager, and I basically am back there making sure everything runs smoothly since Young can't be up there. And working backstage is actually not all that different from working on stage, in that both in stage and on stage you have to learn a lot of empathy to make sure the show runs well. And backstage teaches a lot of responsibility, hard work, and community, because we have to rely on the other people backstage and the other actors to make sure they know their parts and know what they're doing, and to make sure that everything goes well and that there's no hiccups or anything. And then backstage also teaches responsibility and management skills, in that you have to make sure everyone is being responsible and knowing their part, following directions and rules and all that kind of stuff. And you have to micromanage everything that's happening, all the moving parts of the sets, make sure people get on at the right time, make sure people who are supposed to have microphones have them on. Because in this show we had approximately 9 mic switches, which means the microphones that are taped onto actors' faces had to move from one person to another while they were backstage at the same time, which was very difficult to do, but we pulled it off. And then backstage also requires a lot of effective multitasking and communication, because you have to make sure you know how to talk to the other backstage people, know what they're doing, and know what is going on when it's going on. And there has to be a lot of stuff happening at the same time, so while the actors on stage are practicing their parts and they're singing and where they're supposed to be, you're also painting sets, you're also making sure all their lines are correct, you're also highlighting stuff in your script and knowing when scene changes are and when you're supposed to be moving and when curtains have to be opened or closed. And also, theater teaches a lot of kids creativity, because there are a lot of kids who wouldn't be painting without theater, And I consider myself an artsy person. Like, I would draw just normally, but there's a lot of kids who learn to paint, which is a very good skill to have later in life in case you ever need to like paint a house or anything, or like the inside of your room, or like at least know how to build something. And then they have to paint sets and stuff and build tables and that kind of stuff. And also I painted that.
It's beautiful.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I have been in plays for about 3 years now. I started my sophomore year. I wish I got into it a lot earlier because it's been so much fun. But yeah, this past one, I'm in the tech booth and I worked lights and sometimes sound. But basically we're trying to put a live movie on stage, and we have to be very creative and make sure that we can make it look the best and sound the best. So theater production trains practical management skills. I've learned how to communicate with people and gotten a lot more comfortable with being direct and telling people, you need to do this, you cannot do that, what teachers do basically. I've learned how to ask for help and support. We are all a family here. We have each other's backs, and I definitely found that out through the play. Theater brings people happiness. Kids that may have like kind of a hard life at home, they have the opportunity to come out and embrace some make-believe stuff, and be other characters and not worry for a while. It's funny because we're all wiped out after a long school day, but this definitely gives an energy boost and engages everyone in fun. Like I said before, there's a theater family. There's total support. You don't have to be perfect, you can be goofy, or anything really, and we just log in. Working together can create energy, keep each other going, and create this big production that gives the cast and the audience an opportunity to have fun for a few hours. It's a really awesome thing to be a part of.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Excellent work.
Maddie, that was brilliant when your wig came off.
Thank you.
And how the way you handled that was
Thank you.
awesome. It was really good.
I give small props to Young because she was like, you have to do this, or like, give a small something about it. And I was like, okay. And then I ran on stage and that was what happened. So
It
thank
was
you.
fantastic. Yeah.
You handled that beautifully because so many people asked, was that supposed to be part of the show or not? And
Yes, thank
because it was beautifully done. You did awesome. You all did. It was wonderful, wonderful show.
Well, the kids are awesome, but I also have to recognize Carolyn Young, who's just stepped off to the side. I mean, for those of you who saw the show, again, grades 5 through 12, over 80 students. She's a rock star. She's a rock star. So thank you, Carolyn. It was a great performance, and you really do a nice job. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would say one more thing, just back because you guys all kind of talked about a spot to belong. One, I want to say, Taylor, nice job on the sound. My father-in-law, who's deaf, goes, I can hear it. So it was mixed well. It was done really well. The other piece is you talked about having a place to belong and maybe accepted. One of the things I was really impressed with and stuck out is students from, even with special needs, were part of that production.
Yes.
So it wasn't just young and old,
That's right.
but I thought that was a fantastic thing. I think that represented our district well, so congratulations on that. I thought you guys did a great job.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
You did awesome. Such a good show.
That was great. All right. Well, Mr. Keller, can you follow that?
Sure.
All right. So we'll move on to the Director of Teaching and Learning
Thanks for that.
Reports. Yeah.
I hope I get applause when I'm done.
Give it to you to start.
better. All right, a couple of updates here. Just a little update on data. We're working on what's called the student snapshot. That is in progress. That goes on top of what's already in place called our early warning system. And the early warning system takes a look at students' behavior, grades, and attendance. But the student snapshot is an attempt to combine that with current and historic assessment scores from FAST and MAP and possibly ECT, MCA scores. We've uploaded a lot of data in the last month to try to get that up and running, and we're in contact with that vendor, kind of going back and forth. It's quite a process, so it's interesting, and we're learning a lot about the DataViz program as we work, like I said, with that vendor. FastBridge, we're continuing to work with individuals, particularly new staff and PLCs, and we're working on data interpretation and just what is the best way to use that in the classrooms. Again, we're learning as a district, what systems we have in place and how to best get our money's worth out of that product and to establish certain norms and practices as we kind of move through. A little update on assessments. Access for ELL students. ELL starts in late January. That process starts in November and December as we upload data to our state systems from our MARS system up into the state system. FastBridge is on their second set of evaluations. They're wrapping up this week. I just saw updates from the elementary school saying that they are catching up with their stragglers. And then we are also going to assess some different FastBridge tools for possible implementation. And if we do determine that we want to go ahead with that, I'll give you an update in the future. But there is a whole series of tools within these products that we don't use and we pay for. So we're going to take a look at a couple other pieces as we kind of go through. The MAP second round of assessments will begin in January at the middle school. And once those windows close, we are able to pull what's called strand data by grade and section for kind of a high level look and then a class by class look as we kind of go through. Just an update, I think I've mentioned this before, but there's new science standards that are going to be put into place for school year 23-24. I had an opportunity last week, I've had an opportunity to talk to the middle school science staff, and just kind of the big general overview at the middle schools where they're going to get the brunt of the changes with 8th grade earth science moving to grade 6 and 6th grade physical science moving up to grade 8, and some of those physical science standards from grade 9 kind of trickle down into grade 8. There's no longer a standalone physical science standards, and just the timing couldn't be any better though for MYP and IB at the high school, just in terms of putting that into place. And it really gives us this huge opportunity to develop the science curriculum at the high school. And we'll talk a little bit more about the elementary school as that kind of comes into focus. And then I was asked for an MTS position update, and I said, well, let's wait till next month because I have the opportunity to meet with our core committee, which is our QComp advisory team. And then there are representatives from each building. And they had asked, they looked at the initial MTSS proposal end of the school, beginning of the school year, excuse me, and then we had an opportunity to talk about it as a core committee. They took it to the union meeting tonight, I believe, based on what we had talked about on the 10th. We had kind of reworked the wording of the job description. I had Emily Seitzer come in and talk to that core committee. Emily is our special ed coordinator, and kind of explain what the purpose of this MTSS person, or how we could use that position, particularly in our IT process. And we kind of really got some clarity from the core committee and administrative point of view. And so they took it back to the union tonight, and I don't have an update as to what that was, but we left on a real good note, and I think we'll continue to move forward with that position as we kind of go through. My recommendation was that if they want to move forward immediately with that position, at least internally, to potentially post that position. And if we find an internal candidate that we want to move forward with, I don't know that we would start that person until that internal position is filled. I don't want to see a dangling spot out there, is my point. Or if we're going to look at internal and external candidates, we'll wait until the spring, and it's a little more of a normal time to look for those types of positions after. But I think we're kind of getting there anyways. It's just kind of working out that way. So we can come back to that if you've got some questions about that. And then just talking about the data integrationist position, right now, actually Saturdays, today and tomorrow, Mr. Neff is actually at the Sourcewell, which is formerly the TIES conference, and one of the things that I'm encouraging him to do, and I was encouraged to do this when I was in a teaching and learning position and technology integration, is when you go to a conference, try to present. And he took me up on that one, and he actually did. He's presenting a poster related to how to use Chromebooks in the classroom. It got accepted, and what that does is it makes it a lot cheaper to go to these presentations. So we got like a half price deal for him to go. It was a great deal, and I texted him today, and he's like, "Oh, it's going great. People are coming up. I get just these little groups of people that come to me all the time." So he was very excited about that.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's doing a great job with that. We've moved, like I said, we've moved a lot of testing data into Infinite Campus over the last couple of weeks. Oh, yeah, he was working with a publisher regarding the high school course catalog and helping support the training for that with the individuals working with that. We're working on Google Forms, embedding audio and video into Google Slides, active boards, active panels. We had the Promethean active board is the actual, I'm sorry, the panel is the TV type set that we have in a couple of classrooms. He ran some trainings around that. And I've been encouraging to do these lunch and learn sessions at all three of the buildings now. He's going to get into the high school after break, but he's also had a little time to work with our district office staff and just answering some general questions. So if Kathy is kicking stuff out even better, it might be from Kevin. I don't know, Kathy. You'll have to answer that one for us here. And that's what I've got for you tonight. Happy holidays. Any questions?
Questions? Jessica?
I just have a question regarding the science change. You said that's not till 23, 24. And so when that is switching over, like I'm just picturing kids that are like, say currently in 6th grade and they're getting physical science, but when they get to 8th grade, we're going to make sure they still get earth science, that we're not repeating that and they're missing a chunk.
We have a plan all mapped out.
So
there's some state guidelines, and then there's some stuff that we're going to kind of do individually, Rockfordize it a little bit, and it's been laid out. And I can't even give you an example of what the test is going to look like yet, because the state. I mean, we've asked. I've been to a number of conferences about this, and they're kind of like, "Oh, we don't really know what it's going to look like." But it's based on that next generation of science standards, and it's coming. It's kind of cool. If you remember the profiles of learning, I say it looks a lot like that. Just saying, for science. And that's what I see when I look at it. So, yeah, it's a good question. I don't quite have a, but it's all mapped out.
Brady?
Yeah, so question on the MTSS position. It sounds like there's been some headway there. The job description reworked, taken to the core committee, unions in process of reviewing or reviewed this evening. Let's say that the union, you get the feedback, the job description as stated, not a fit, or is a fit. So what's the next steps if it's great, and then if it's not great, and like how much time are we talking here? I know this one's been dangling out there, so.
To answer that, I kind of mentioned that I wouldn't mind seeing us post it internally and see if there's somebody who's really interested and qualified for that position. That would be my next step. If we find somebody, I would wait until we fill their position. Does that make sense? Like I don't want to
find an internal candidate.
If we find an internal candidate, then we're going to have an open position somewhere in the district, and so I don't want to pull somebody. Let's say it was a classroom teacher. I don't want to pull somebody out of the classroom until we have a replacement for that person, if that makes sense. Then we'd move ahead with that training. Some of the questions that were asked, for instance, is like, what type of training will this person get? I can't answer that until I know who the person is, but we can talk about, the use of data. If that person's coming with like a administrative background, that's a different individual than somebody with a special ed background. or a reading licensure, or strong in math. So it kind of depends on what that person brings to the table. That will determine kind of what steps in terms of training we do with them as we move forward, and then kind of the time frame after they're hired. Yeah. So there's still a couple barriers, but I saw a little better movement in the last couple of weeks than I had seen in the past.
So does like a vote need to happen at this point?
Well, that's
Or,
kind
like,
of up to the union.
What's going on?
I'll move forward with it if they say thumbs up, and I don't know. I can't answer that on there.
Okay.
So that's kind of the internal union process at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Great.
Thank you.
He said he wanted to get I did.
I appreciate it.
I'm just trying to make him feel good.
I see. All right.
Well, then I gotta bring the others back. Huh?
No.
Next up is our International Baccalaureate Administrators Report. Hi, Matthew.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. I just want to say how impressed I think we all are and were with those students, with Caroline Young, the director. Wow, just very, very amazing. The poise. And something that they talked about, even in the slideshow, was a key word that I want to focus on, and really is a foundation of IB, and that's collaboration. And it really is going to take all of us to implement 3 different programs, and I'd like to go over some of the things that we're working on currently and in the future. Point number 1, our preparation for the DP, the diploma program, and the career program site visit that will take place on January 20th and 21st. I had a 45-minute conversation with our consultant last week just to talk logistics, to talk about, to put this in perspective, January 21st is the first day of the second semester. It's a 2-hour late start, and so we are going to front load all of our meetings on the 20th with our teachers, so that therefore they can completely focus on their classes and if they have new groupings of students on the 21st. So we're really looking forward to that. As Bobby mentioned, Carol Nielsen is as good as they get. She's brilliant, and she really spearheaded our efforts this summer with our IB Academy. And what that was is 3 days, 21 hours, where staff gave up their summer to come in and work on unit plans. And half of our teachers did that. I mean, that's amazing. It really is amazing. And Carol led those, and I know it's going to be a great learning opportunity on the 20th. And that'll be a great blend of high school and middle school staff working together. One final thing about the site visit from our DP consultant and CP consultant, and she does consult us on both programs, is she'll give us guidance for the next steps. So we have our IB action plan, and I can give you some data. I just shared it with Rhonda and Kevin. We've now, of the 138 items that have to be either in progress or in place, we have 50 that I would say are at the completion level. And my threshold for that is that we're able to write on them in terms of our application for authorization. So we're at that level. We have enough data, we have enough meetings, we have enough stuff to proceed. We have 75 that are in progress, and we have 13 that are not started. And those 13 are almost all CP related. That is our area of growth, and we've been talking as an IB admin team of getting our administrators more engaged in training. You'll see it a little farther down. We have one teacher going to training in January, and that is to personal and professional skills, which is a foundation piece of the career program, so we're really excited about that. The IB Advisory Committee, we met today. And we did review our IB implementation action plan. Our project team today focused on a couple things. First was the assessment policy. And when I said collaboration, it's bringing the voice of as many people as we can into the conversation. When we have a meeting and there's 5 people or 10 people here, that's not everyone, right? So we worked today on a Google form. How can we make it as clear, as easy to use, as short as possible, but still include all the information we need? So that was our prime focus today, and we made great progress. And then we also talked about how do we work collaboratively. We have our registration presentations coming up on February 20th. We're looking forward to that. And we'll continue work in our project teams. I mentioned earlier those 75 items that are in progress. What we discussed is our Wednesday IB workshops. For this first part of the school year, a lot of times those have either been, we worked on our 2-hour late start, we worked on policies, or it's been a chance for me to talk to the entire staff. How we're going to transform that time is into either vertical articulation, meaning your departments meet together, grades 9 through 12, individuals and societies, or grades 9 through 12, mathematics. Giving those teachers that chance to talk, to make sure we're taking each step of the way. We know we're rolling out MYP predominantly with our 9th graders this year. Depending on the teachers, some teachers are actually using those rubrics and using those unit plans with their other classes. We're also going to have horizontal articulation or grade level. And I'll give you one specific example. Our 9th and 10th graders, they've never met with each other. So we're going to get them together here in January or early February, and that'll be a chance for them to talk about, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're hearing from our 9th graders, here's what's worked well, here's if we could go back and change it, what we would do. So it's that collaboration that is key. Professional development, we had our most recent Wednesday IB workshop, and that was going through potential DP pathways. That is one of the line items in our IB implementation guides. Our staff needs to be aware of what's possible. And when we talked about, when we talk with our 9th graders, they've got a lot of ideas. They're so invested, and that's what the students that I talk to, they are just so engaged. They've got a lot of anxiousness, and I understand it. Because just to put this in perspective, what Bobby talked about of having standards-based grading, that 0 to 8 scale, that'll be great once that's in operation for a couple, 2 or 3 years, because you'll matriculate from 8th grade to 9th grade. That's the MYP rubric, is 0 to 8. However, this year's 9th grader, it's like they were plopped into a whole new school environment in which the teachers, administrators, students have never worked together before, right? This group has never worked together before, and now they are, as they said to me, we kind of feel like we're the guinea pigs. And I said, well, glass half full, you're the first, and you'll be the only first group. And if everything comes to pass, if we meet every threshold for our implementation policies, you might be the first diploma students or career program students or certificate students. So we really are trying to support students. I think a couple of 9th graders told me today, and Miss Dean stopped down and they said, we're already burned out with IB. I said, it's December, we're 3 months in. So it's meeting folks where they're at. They're being honest. And so I really appreciate that feedback, and we're working to support them, to support everyone moving forward. Communication and feedback opportunities. I'm very excited to share. We recorded 2 podcasts in this very room last week and on Friday. They've been posted. We're still at number 3, holding steady at number 3 on IB Matters. They now have a complete page dedicated to the Rockford High School IB journey. So this isn't anything we're paying for. This is John Peterson, the leader of the Minnesota IB Network, coming out here, bringing all his expertise and his equipment. And Maris Ehlers, one of our parents, community, cheerleader, right? Community leader. And we sit and talk, and she and I answered questions that have been raised from parents and students. And then we also interviewed Mr. Pennings, and there's never a dull moment in an interview with Mr. Pennings, so that was really good. An idea we have coming up is to bring something we don't have. We don't have any alumni that have gone through an IB program, right? We're starting it, stands to reason. So we want to bring in some alumni from other Minneapolis metro schools and their parent to come in. And so we're going to gather questions. I already know a lot of the questions that our kids are asking, but we want to get questions from our parents too. So that's an upcoming podcast that we're looking forward to. We continue with our social media and our IB Lunch Bunch. We can certainly say these ninth graders are not afraid of providing feedback, so that's a good thing. And finally, our Northwest Suburban and our Magnet Schools Assistance Program, our grant coordinator is going to be here tomorrow. We have a 3-hour meeting set to go through budget, to go through best practices, to go through our upcoming site visits, just to make sure we are working, hand in glove with each other on that. Any questions on these items?
Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Yes, let me turn this on. Thank you for all the information, Dr. Scheidler. One thing I would like you just to maybe elucidate just a bit more on the progress. At maybe a couple meetings ago, I asked if we could have some kind of document that shows your progress, maybe with some, just for that accountability piece. You've mentioned, I heard you say like we've chopped like 50 of them and we have so many to go. Is there any kind of documentation that you can bring? Because I'm kind of a visual person, just to see where we are on our journey, and maybe, especially with the feedback as they come out and do the site visits, I just want to make sure that, we're where we're supposed to be. So if you can provide a little bit more clarity with that.
Certainly. Well, we have a Google Sheet. I don't know if the board is asking me to share that. I mean, I don't know if superintendent, I don't have any qualms with that. That's something that we've been using as a document to track our progress. It's something that former Superintendent Durant mentioned. There is no book for Rockford of how we're going to implement IB. So we're doing the best we can, collaborating internally and externally. But I can certainly, if that's what you want, I don't know if that's directed by the board. I'll do whatever is asked, however I can support.
Because I thought we did ask about that a couple meetings ago, and just whatever to, like, the evidence as you collect it. I just want a bigger picture that makes sure that we are, I know what the end point is, but I don't know what's going on in the middle. And it doesn't have to be really detailed, just an overview. Yeah, so that I just want to make sure that we're giving you the support you need to get us to the end, but it's really hard for me to know what support is necessary and then just some of the evidence to go along with it.
But I think you had asked about the matrix of objects with what are the anticipated, when do we have to have those in and submitted? And then when was the completion of that? That's what you had asked, if I remember, October 20th.
Yeah. So we did ask that a couple of meetings ago. So if at some point, and if you want to share it via Google or through Rhonda, whatever, is out there is fine. I just would like to have ability to look at the progress.
Okay, so is that, and again, I'm not trying to say I'm not going to share it. I know people have said things at meetings before, but I guess what's the process with the school board? Because working with our previous superintendent, it was maybe different than it is now. So I'm just trying to chair Edwards. Is that?
I think Rhonda, you had a comment.
Well, I was going to just share, Dr. Shadley, maybe we can share the checkoff sheet, or maybe even if it's not the full checkoff sheet, maybe chunking it, so not to overwhelm the board with the details of the implementation process.
So what I printed out for you today, that just had it just had the name of the objective, the 138 objectives. It indicates, does it have to be in place or in progress, the begin date and end date. That's pretty straightforward. And
I think that's pretty much what I saw when I went to the IB training. So that's what I mean. I'm not asking you to create something. There's already out there, and I just want to.
And that's actually a very, because I'm visual too, and I actually asked Matthew to color code them for me. Like the green is good to go, yellow is in progress, and the red is not yet started. So maybe that's something that we can forward to the board.
And that way, I think as a board, we kind of know, we need to, because this is a big lift for you and the district. So and we're here to help with that.
Certainly.
So that way we kind of know where maybe we can help out or how it's going.
Should I send that to Kathy to distribute it, or how would you like me to share that?
Yeah, so this is a great conversation. So usually it goes to the superintendent.
Okay.
So it would go through Rhonda to then be distributed to the board. And I think what I'm hearing is just like that high level, directionally. And I think the thing that, I heard from Kevin after he came back from IB training too is, I didn't go, but the cautionary tale of sometimes things get accomplished in clusters too. So we might have a little bit of green now, but expect a lot of red to turn to yellow to green in a short period of time. And so that's the thing where I just, I hear what you're saying, Beth, that, we want to be here as a board and be supportive to the process. And timelines, red isn't always bad. And clusters happen, and that's where we look for our leadership to put meaning to it. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I would expect this to be and these things to happen and whatever. And then it's also a, again, for our visual board members, a nice opportunity for you to say, hey, I'm worried about this one, And then we say, oh, well, what can we do to help you?
Great.
And so, yeah, I didn't go to IB training, but if there's something that makes sense, I would leave it up to you to think that through and then to work with Rhonda, and then she'll distribute it accordingly. Kevin, you have a further
I think
please say something.
Whenever, and Beth, I understand completely what it is that you're looking for. Like, this is a big lift, where are we going? Whenever the board gets in a managerial role, I don't like it. I'll vote against it. I mean, I won't do that. And so, because IB is such a big thing for our district, I would say the amount of time Matthew has spent in front of the board has probably been more than any other staff member on the depth of pieces. So in order to get that, I like the chunking piece that you talked about, is that, because that doesn't feel managerial, that feels like, where are we at in the process, even as we're learning more information. So I'd be in support of that, and with every other person, the way that has come to the board in the past has been through the superintendent. So as the temporary interim superintendent, that would be, I imagine, the way it goes. And then, and the board, we're going to ask tons of questions, just like we are asking on different things, and it is a big lift. And it's not our job to manage you, right? So those are the pieces that I just want to be careful that we don't step into.
And I wasn't thinking of more of a managerial. I was more like, wow, let's celebrate now. Great progress. Let's thank you, and not so much that we are here to support you, and I want it to have more of a celebration than any kind of managerial.
Perfect. We have it. I mean, we have it, and I can even isolate just those cells, and we can be ready to go. And just one caveat, this site visit coming up, part of that feedback is going to say, hey, we got to prioritize number 122 and 122, and we would reorient at that point.
And that's what I expected from the IB training, is I just kind of want a visual to see where we're at, because this is a priority for the district right now to push this through.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
And then I would task the board of, let's listen to those podcasts, right? And
they're good.
And get that kind of stuff as well. There's just some.
Haven't you done that yet?
I haven't. I've listened to one. I haven't listened to this one yet. I have it here now, though. I was pulling it up as we were talking.
So, Matthew, I asked a little bit ago on that October meeting also, being the money guy, right? I asked for a tentative. Share gives us opportunity to see where our district budget is all the time, right? You're managing a $5 million or whatever $1 million grant, right? How much has been spent? How much is remaining? And what is our allocation of what we're planning for? I would love to know a little bit more to make sure that, one, yes, by the time we're done, all of this is spent, and two, do we have enough to cover what we need to do in this grant? Now, granted, I understand some of it may need to come out of the general fund, but I just want to make sure that we all know we are within our grant monies and not going to have to be digging in, because all of a sudden we're like, oh no, poor planning, way more expensive than what we anticipated, because I don't want to have a hit in 3 or 4 years for the general fund. So I'd like to see that projection of when we are, and I asked that in October as well. So if I could see that when you have the opportunities as the year turns, that would be great. I'd appreciate that greatly. The other thing, and I saw you had part of it, you had your breakout sessions with your assessment policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so excited about the unpacking of the standards and power standards that's occurring at the middle level, and I know that's going to occur at the high school level as well eventually, because with standards-based grading comes standards associated to your courses as well. The hardest thing is, are you standards aligned or are you standard, right? Those are questions of how you grade. What do we have additional PD in place for our teachers to teach our high, because they're so accustomed to opinion-based 90, 80, 70, 60, right? Not development of rubrics, and I know the content that you're purchasing has a lot of these rubrics in place. Is there PD to help train our high school staff on how to be a standards-based assessment person? Are we doing that at all? Because, I mean, think about our elementary school teachers are immersed in that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a completely different paradigm for our high school staff to be able to break that down. Is there PD planned for that to occur?
Well, as a foundational answer, yes. So every teacher that goes to training, that is a part of their training. In terms of
and ongoing then here?
Yes, we have resources to definitely support. As I talked about this summer, the IB Academy, that was a huge focus of that work, was creating authentic assessments and utilizing the MYP rubrics. As we continue to move forward into potential DP and CP and preparing for those courses, because as we prepare to get authorized, we have to show we have course outlines, we have at least one assessment to show that authorization team. So yes, we will have to have those.
And that's what I'd love to hear about. This is what we did this month to support our staff to continue to grow. That would be great. I would love to hear that in your presentation. That would be awesome.
Okay.
So, and then the scope and sequence is kind of in place, I saw in the course catalog book that you had shared with us. I appreciate it. Do we have and this is what it would take to be a certificate student, a diploma student, yes, and I would guess that will come.
Yes, that will be in
this
the future.
year, soonish.
In 2019, no.
In the 2019-20 school year?
Yes. So the question was, what's the question?
Will we be able to have a good idea of this is the proposed scope and sequence of a current ninth grader, incoming ninth grader, of this is how I can accomplish to be a diploma candidate? What courses we may have or what we would be.
Well, I would say that's in the course registration guide.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my response to that. That absolutely, because certainly 9 and 10 is in place, 11, 12 is tentative, pending authorization.
Okay.
And just Mr. Cordy, from a budget perspective at Northwest Suburban, I do get an update every 2 months when we have our joint powers board of how we're doing with the spend.
Yeah, where we're spent.
Yep.
I want to know that.
Yep. And I do think that we would be well positioned to pull from some of that data that we have to submit I'm talking we, because I'm on joint powers board, but that has to be submitted with a grant coordinator just to. I hear what you're saying.
Yep.
And that's the same question that I ask every month at Joint Powers Board. Are we positioned to spend down the federal grant dollars? I look at Matthew each month. How are we doing on spending down the dollars and all of those sort of things? And then long term, all of those sort of things. So those are the right things to be worried about. One, we want to maximize the grant that we have, which, again, is a big part of it. And the long-term sustainability, and as a board, those are the things that we worry about from a financial perspective.
Especially curriculum purchases are big ticket purchases. So what's our plan for them? And then the professional development and ongoing learning is a huge chunk of those monies. So just to know.
And they are definitely built in. Yes, huge slices.
And I'd like to see that projection of when.
Okay, I will share that with Superintendent Dean.
And see how you guys want to package it for us, because we're not going to tell you how to.
No, I don't want line items. I just want
but just and again, if there's things that we need to anticipate to, you know, once the grant ends, are there things that we need to worry about? Because I bet that you have a list.
There is, and that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to reference
And
what
I'm
Mr.
going that
Barty
way
was
too.
saying earlier. There will be, and when it comes to authorization, we won't be authorized unless the district is committed to supporting professional development, things like Manage Back, which could be about $10,000 a year, that data management system. However, that covers multiple facets of NYP, DP, and CP. So there are ongoing costs, the authorization costs, the yearly, I mean, those are things that will be there.
And I just want to make sure we're scaffolded for that to progress and be successful.
To give a little context on that, when we submitted this grant, we had to have all $2 million accounted for. So that's in stone, and we are doing everything we can to adhere. We are literal to that grant, right, of what was set aside for technology, for instructional supplies, for personnel. So we are pursuing it, and the gentleman that's coming tomorrow for our 3-hour kick, that actually is our focus, so that's
Very good.
germane.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. We worry
Hate to
about
always
the
be the money
finances.
person.
I know. All right, any other?
There may be a reason we put you in that role.
I'm looking forward to you having it next year.
Any further questions?
Not necessarily
Okay,
a
or
question,
comments?
comment, input
Sure.
into however we want to report all of this information back. I think, you know, you've been doing a fine job with the bulleted list. I think some sort of you know, whether it's a burn down from a financial, from a milestone perspective, what we're headed for, great. I like to keep things really simple myself, so, you know, I would love to hear, you know, at the beginning or maybe at the end when you're wrapping it up, in general, are we on track or are we off track? You know, that's the number one thing, on track or off track. And then what are our risks to, you know, that may become a reality should a decision have to be made or money become short or we have extra money. And then what are our issues? In other words, this is something that's real, that's happened, that's occurred, that we need to deal with, that you need board level support or help with. You know, obviously manage risks and issues at a more detailed level within your own realm. But those are the three key things: is on track, off track, what are our risks, what are our issues. You know, I think it's great to hear about all the things that we're accomplishing. When I hear things in that context, it's easy for my my simple mind to process. So
Sure, and I'm not trying to give an excuse, I'm just trying to say, I'm also trying to navigate in a whole new.
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I'm not saying you're giving an
So
excuse. I'm just saying this is how I
want
process
to
info.
get that,
And I'm a simple guy, so on track, off track, risks and issues.
You can do it.
It'll become a 3-minute board update if
Yeah.
we go there for Brady.
Hey,
That'd be
boom,
fun.
boom. That's,
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, very good. Awesome. Yeah, and this is huge work, so thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions specific to that? Otherwise, I think you're the next agenda item too.
The next 3, I think.
Okay. So we'll move
Someone just said, "Oh no."
I know.
did I
I
hear groans from the
Talk
gallery?
know. We'll move on to the
All right, here we go.
Okay, the high school rigorous course transition plan. Would you like to present that?
So this is actually, when you talk about risks, I will say this is directly related to this. And what I tried to elucidate in this statement here is our folks are really craving clarity. What does the future hold? I know we can't lay out every single thing. What I've laid out here is no new money. It's a continuation of what we've been doing. This district has supported college in the schools and advanced placement to some degree for our 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students, at least over the last 10 years. I can tell you every single conversation I have with a family member, just about everyone with a student, it comes right back to this. And I've had students, staff, parents wonder if we don't have these things, because they know the history, they know what CIS provided them when they went to maybe a Minnesota public college or a neighboring college, neighboring state that accepted those credits. Nobody knows about IB. That is an unknown. We will find out. We don't even know when we're going to be authorized. We are striving to be authorized as soon as we possibly can. So in that light, what I've asked is to really mirror the grant, which is through the 22-23 school year, that we keep doing what we've been doing, which is supporting the CIS and AP. And I added in that last clause, including the possibility of co-seating rigorous courses. This stems from conversations with administration, with teachers speaking strongly in support of pursuing this co-seating, because they see the colleges that we're aligned with are not necessarily telling our teachers how to teach. And IB is not necessarily telling us what to teach. They're more on the how and how you assess. So this is a possible win-win that we want to pursue. And I can tell you, when I brought this up at the last board meeting, I did receive several texts afterwards, and it wasn't groans of disgust, it was hallelujah. Thank you for sharing that grid. Thank you for proposing this of possibly continuing CIS and IB.
Are you looking to expand our AP courses then? Or what are you, I mean, we have minimal AP right now.
Right, I said maintain access.
So does that mean to the test, or what does that mean to?
Well, I think how these AP classes came about, it all depends, right? Like in our calculus, we didn't intend to offer AP Calc. We were forced into that, right? The college that we're aligned with wouldn't accept who we proposed to be that teacher. They told us and we had a retirement. These are things that are out of our control. However, our students were on that track that by their 4th year of high school, they're ready to take calc. And so by the works of our counseling department and our teacher that went to training this summer, we're now offering AP Calc. I think that's a great example of how people rise to the occasion. So I don't know it's necessarily an expansion of AP or even CIS. And there are things about CIS that we don't know the future of. I can tell you, one thing Kevin mentioned is presenting at these conferences. So I went to the Minnesota Rural Educators Association and I presented there. One of the things I learned in a session was 18 Online. I don't know if you're familiar with that. 18 Online, if the Higher Learning Commission wants high school teachers that are going to teach CIS to either have a degree in that department, so I'll just use economics. You either have an economics degree, which is very rare for a high school teacher to have a degree in economics, or you have 18 graduate credits in that field in economics. Well, 18 Online is free. The teacher doesn't have to pay anything. What they've worked out with school boards is that the lane changes and those sorts of things would have to be worked out, but that is an option that's out there. And so, again, coming back and Superintendent Dean can talk to this too, Principal Dean can talk to this. We were in those department meetings and our teachers, and we said to them, if we're going to pursue this, we'd still have to be teaching, and assessing the way DP and IB and CP, all those things. And they said, yes, we want to do that. So we want to explore it. I can't guarantee it, but I can tell you if I had this clarity to speak with students, some of these conversations or this uncertainty would be quelled. Because there's anxiousness. I'm going to be very honest with you. That's one of my concerns, is the anxiousness, anxiety, whatever you want to call it.
So when I went to the training, right, I did the administrators training, and we talked a little bit about AP versus IB, and can you do both? And some of it are just different, right? So AP has an American history, while your IB course, which is a world history, and is that over 2 years or what? Is that 1 year?
Well,
so the co-seating them would be a challenge.
Well, if I'll use the example I put in here is economics. We would co-seat when they are aligned, when the information aligns. So we have European history HL, which is what the IB course is called. It's also exactly what Caroline Young was here tonight. So if you were a student in CIS, because right now we only offer one of those sections, our students can earn 4 college credits through the University of Minnesota Duluth. If we pursued this co-seating option, and I can tell you Grand Rapids High School is doing this. They co-seat IB and CIS. Those Grand Rapids students, after that 2-year class, they've got 8 credits of CIS in their back pocket, and that is transcripted credits. You can't take that away, for better or worse, right? You got to produce because you're in college.
Yeah.
So it's what we're kind of looking at is it's the best of both worlds. We wouldn't try to do a mashup of courses that weren't in alignment or on the same topics.
Do you think that would influence the number of students that would go for a diploma program or a?
That's a great question. We talked about if we're going to offer this, and I don't want to put words in Superintendent Dean's mouth. We talked about if we're going to offer this, if you're taking it for the CIS, you're also taking the HL, and you are taking the assessment. And what we also talked about, and I don't have this in the presentation now, but those assessments, they're about they're $119 per assessment, right, for IB tests. If you're taking 6 of them, that adds up. The state.
Have we decided if that's a parent cost or a district cost yet?
Well, I was going to get to that. So the state reimburses $60. Okay. So now we're looking at about $60. What I know we've had internal conversations on is, and I think we did at the work session, at least it was bandied about, is should the district, as we are just launching this and want to encourage as many students as possible, should the district cover that last $60 per test? And then if you're in this CIS class, you're also taking the HL. So it really is you're in for both.
So can I, just from clarity on my own part, right? So what we're looking for is the opportunity for the continuation of CIS and AP courses. And then we can continue to look at this as time exists, right? That's what we're looking for. And then we're looking at possible action for that if possible. So in a nutshell, we're just saying we can. This is an option for us to continue forward with this.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Fine. Good.
I'm trying to promote
Thank
it
you.
would be very good.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
I just wanted to make sure I had my brain into what you're saying.
You're spot on.
Yep.
Very good.
So there's obviously a lot of pros to it, right? If you're co-seating, you get the college and schools credit, the IB exam, so on. Lots of great opportunity to make forward progress for our students. What are the drawbacks of this, that we need to be considering? Like if this is an action and we're saying, yeah, I think it's a great change management tool, first of all, right? So you continue to offer these things as you get further and further down the IB path. And so another plus there, like what are the drawbacks that we need to be considering or be aware of here?
Well, the biggest one, what I would say would be to the staff. For you, and we broach that in those department meetings. Are you sure this is, we ask those teachers. We have 8 teachers that are teaching either CIS or advanced level AP courses, 9 actually. And so they all said, yes, we want to pursue this because we know how valuable CIS has been. And they feel, and again, we'd have to work it out with each individual liaison at each college, but the way our staff discussed is that this would be an option, an opportunity to pursue. And that's what I'm asking is just, as a school district, as a board, that we continue maintaining what we've been doing as we blend the options, because we have students that are making decisions. So I'm going to go back to one of the biggest pros to give this clarity. It would take away probably the biggest argument I've heard against going to just IB, because that was also part of conversations that CIS would be going away. IB is going to be it. IB is the only game in town. I don't know if this board is saying that, but people a lot of times tell me things I've said which I've never said, right? They've just heard it in rumor. But that is one fear. Maybe I should place it that way. It's one fear for people that it'll just be IB, CIS will go away. What I'm trying to say is put this statement out that I can keep referencing because I'm the one talking to these parents, talking to these students, and I want to be able, I don't want them to be thinking of all these other options besides staying here, because this is a great place to be.
Right. 1 second. Brady, Tim.
So if the drawback is the impact on staff, and the staff said they're all on board, are there any other drawbacks that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think it is a cost. right? And I had that in the grid, it's
Yep.
about $3,000 per section, so it's, but the way I phrase this, it's no new money by the board. It's money that has already been allocated every year. This is my 6th year in Rockford, and every year it's been allocated for those IB classes.
Matthew, and I'll also say that it's also a positive because it keeps those kids in school.
Yep.
Instead of us losing that child completely to PSEO, we get state reimbursement for those
Yep.
kids still
It's an
here.
investment,
so,
yeah.
So that's,
Yep.
so, very good.
Brady, to answer your question, another, you had asked what are the drawbacks. One of the things that we're, I don't want to say fearful of, is that by maintaining CIS and AP, that it kind of undermines the IB diploma. And so by co-seating it, we're still able to capture those kids, and we're not trying to create two different lanes. They're staying, I mean, we're a small school, so they're staying in the same lane. I think one of the things that we're going to want to bring forward to the board at some point is we do financially support our CIS students. And so what is our willingness then to maybe support our IB families with the cost of the exam, given the fact that the exam is significant. I don't want to say significantly more, but it is more. And so that's one of the things that will likely come back to the board and ask for some direction to support our students who are maintaining or staying in on that IB track, to support their ability to get that full IB diploma.
I think that for me is the risk I see is we can go back and find some easy things, right? And so if we found an easy solution in the temporary, is that helping get to where we want to be down the road? And that's my concern is now is a conversation at home. Don't worry about the IB. We can just continue with the CIS, which we've always done. And we've taken all these resources and putting it into IB, and now we're going, well, you could do that or you could do this.
I want to be clear,
It's not an or.
there isn't an or, it's and. You're doing both.
So is the only way you can do CIS is if you are going in a diploma program or if you're doing a higher level class? Because CIS you can do one by one, right? Diploma program is a continuum.
But you can do diploma program, you can do a la carte.
But
You
you
don't have
can't
to
get a
be-
diploma that way. You can do the higher level classes, but you can't get the diploma at the end.
Correct. But if you took 3 HL courses
Yeah.
and got a 6, that's 24 college credits.
So it puts you, it puts you short of the diploma.
Oh, right, you would, in order to get a full diploma, you have to assess in all 6
Yep.
groups.
Yeah.
But as a student, and I've talked to 9th graders, I've talked
Yep.
to folks all around the metro, there are students that will take just a
The
2
higher
or
level
3
classes.
HL classes. Like, I love history, I want to take that, I love biology, but I don't necessarily want to take all the full diploma. That's an option. But if you're taking HL, you're also taking CIS, like they would be merged. So it wouldn't be, and I think Rhonda did a great job of explaining that, it wouldn't be, I can do this AP CIS over here and then IB's over here. We don't have enough resources for that.
So then AP is a 1-year course. HL courses are 2 years long.
Mhm.
How does that come in alignment?
You just have to pick which year you're going to present. I mean, AP Calculus is during your senior year, you can't do that your junior year. So, and what I can say, I'm meeting with our math teachers tomorrow, they just attended training. I don't know if AP Calc will absolutely match up with math A and A or A and I, so I'll get more information tomorrow.
This, by the way, was my whole training at the IB class, was administrators figuring out how do we do this, right? And part of the challenge is focusing in different areas, right? And so I'm all for it, and there's a lot of good that it does, right? It takes some of that away. there may be some consequences that we don't see because of it.
I hear you. I also see the consequences if we start losing students, or if this anxiety keeps building. I mean, I told you how the kids
Yep.
said they were burned out. Now, if we're gonna say we're not making, and I'm not trying to force you to make a decision today, I'm just telling you, this is the number one
Yep.
thing I hear from our stakeholders. And that includes staff. I mean, they are absolutely focused on this topic.
So this is possible action, correct?
It is a
So I'd like to
possible
make a motion then to approve the high school rigorous course transition plan as presented.
I'll second
Alright.
that.
Ooh, I have a motion on the floor with a first and an immediate second. Any further discussion? No further discussion? All right, pending no further discussion, we have a motion on the floor. I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Next.
Matthew. Next, on to the 2021 high school registration guide for grades 9 through 10. We talked about this a lot at our work session. The final version was in your board packet. This one is an action item. Does anyone have any questions? Matthew, are there any things that you want to highlight or tell us about?
I just want to highlight the folks that worked on this. Our counselor, Jill Gordy, our secretarial staff, our teachers, every single teacher that was engaged in this, our administrator. I can't think of anyone that didn't contribute to this, but certainly our counseling department was the thrust behind this, and they are works of art. I mean, they really are. And to take our 2.5 hour conversation from that work session and to see what you see now in that 9-10 and the 11-12, they're beautiful.
Yes.
And they're informative, and they absolutely flow and are easy to understand and easy to read. So I just want to make sure that's stated on the record.
Thank you for stating that. Yeah.
And you know, even in our planning session, as we were planning to what do we get on this board meeting, Jill walked over and said, "Okay, we can get it done, right?"
Yeah.
And so that was appreciated,
Yeah.
and it looks great.
Yeah.
Yes.
To be able to
It's
see the
amazing.
full registration guide like this with all of the feedback and everything incorporated, it's
It looks
I would
really
agree,
cool.
it's
Yeah.
really well done. So kudos to everyone. Thank you.
I will make sure I pass it on. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other? Was there anything else you wanted to highlight or call out?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have questions? Otherwise, this is an action. I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion to approve the 2020, I'm just gonna say the 2021 RHS registration guide for grades 9 and 10 as presented.
Great. I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right. Pending no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank
All
you.
right.
Excellent.
And our next, one more. Our next agenda item is just a information. So this is not an action tonight. We would anticipate that this would likely come back in January at our regularly scheduled board meeting. But what you'll see is the 2021 high school registration guide for grades 11 and 12. And is there anything you wanted to call out on this one?
Just the only difference, you'll see the career pathways and some of the explanation of CIS classes are in the 11-12 booklet.
Oh, yeah.
What it doesn't include, what 11-12 doesn't include that 9-10 included was the MYP and the potential DP. And the reason they're bifurcated is because our 9 and 10 students, they are the students that are, number one, exposed to MYP now and could potentially have DP and CP while they're in high school. Our 11th and 12th graders are in front of that wave, so they will not have, they might have some access to some of those electives that we have, our precursor classes like theory of logic, maybe a film studies class, but they are not in the MYP cohort, if that makes sense.
Good. Great. So,
Just to clarify, I know it's an informational item, but I'm thinking it should be an action item.
And what's your reasoning for that?
So we could start printing these as soon as
Exactly, so
possible.
we can start printing.
Did we see it?
This is the first time I've seen it.
Well, there were no changes other than the one course, and we we're hoping to share that course with you today.
Okay.
It's my oversight. I just leaned over to Kathy because I was thinking it was an action item. You're absolutely correct, though. We did not bring the 11-12 guide forward because there were really no changes from last year, other than I want to say 1 or 2 courses.
Okay.
And I know Miss Gordy, our counselor, is in the audience. If you'd want her to come up and just highlight those specific changes, but again, there's only a few.
Yeah.
And I want to say probably 2 or 3. But otherwise, the course guide is similar to last year.
And just as we were planning on this is where Jill, the intention was first going to be the changes, right? Because the book is so much the same on except those 2 courses. So, yeah, I think it might make sense to have Jill come and share, don't you?
Sure. Yeah, that would work.
I'd love to hear what those descriptions are.
Yeah, and then we can.
And then, yeah, that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, the only difference that is in your book, actually, the courses that you approved in the 9th book are the same courses that are in here. So those would be the only change that we had to the 11-12 book this year. And the difference, and like Matthew indicated, the reason we did it is our 11-12 kids are not in the height. They're not fully immersed in the IB program like our 9-10. So to add all that other language doesn't make sense. So that's the only change that you approved in the 9th. Yes, Jessica.
Just have a question. So it's showing calculus for next year will be a CIS. Do we have that approved, or when do we get approved?
Yes, no, next year it will be a AP.
Okay. It shows on page 11, CIS courses, math, and it says calculus.
Oh, you're right.
Southwest
Thank you
State.
for catching that. No, that needs to be changed. That needs to come off there.
Okay.
That's why we didn't print it yet.
Yeah.
No, it'll be an AP, which is in the back in the department, and then in the back of your course guide back here.
Do we know what we need to do so that we could, at some point, have that as a CIS again for calculus?
Yes, Alex Vossi would have. If Alex is teaching the course, he needs to have a master's in math.
Okay. And is he currently working towards it? Do we know? We don't know. We don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose that's not our information.
Yeah. Our teachers
apologize.
going for it if that's
If
why we
they
couldn't
have-
teach it. You have
so
to have
we're
a master's in the
waiting
Clinton area.
to see if that happens. Okay.
So the other teachers that are teaching the CIS have a master's in that category?
Or they were approved prior to
Gotcha.
the new
Yeah.
rules coming out.
Right.
So if we have somebody leave that's teaching a CIS class and we don't have somebody to replace them in the content area, then
So
we
it'll
can't
be,
offer
it'll
that.
be fluid, right?
Mhm.
And that's something, and I'm aware of that, so I just wanted to, something to keep our eyes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay.
Any other questions?
So Rhonda, you made mention that you were hoping this to be an action item rather than just informational. Can you explain again why you were hoping for that?
Well, we're hoping to actually print both guides over winter break because once we get back in January, it's just rapid fire in terms of meeting with our 8th graders and just starting the registration process.
And that process begins in early January? Or
Well,
the
when
meetings?
we come back from, the way our break's set up this year, we literally walk into the last 2 weeks of the semester. So we have one full week of school and then the next week is finals. And those 2-3 weeks of the transition between semesters are crazy. So we would like to be able to get most of our registration materials printed. Currently, I have one more day of an intern and then that's it. And we don't have a guided secretary right now, so we're kind of operating on fumes here. So it'd be nice to get a lot of this done. If I can get it done this week, I'd like to. If we can't, we can't, but that's kind of where we're at. We like to get this stuff taken care of. And our registration date is February 20th this year. And our curriculum fair will be that night as well.
And all these documents go along at registration as well as posted online, so all of that work has to be done well in
Right.
advance. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I like to get stuff taken care of.
It's like a date.
All right. Any other questions? There has been a request to amend this to become an action item. I would maybe ask for a motion. I think I have to have somebody make a motion
Correct.
to change that to become an action item. So I would entertain that motion first.
I'll make a motion to change this to an action item to approve the registration guide.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And this is just to modify the.
Yep, so the only concern on an action item is that we haven't gone through it with the comb right on different things, and so, which then we see, it's just a small error, catch it, and we make some fixes. So if the board can't do that, I would say, can you hand it off to one more person or whatever, just kind of look through that it gets that comb again before printing versus going through. That would be my only thing.
So may I ask you, so has the board previously gotten the whole book presented to them, or was it just changes in?
We've only handed over the changes in a document in the past. We've never actually handed you this before. That's new this year. And that's because we had significant changes this year.
Correct.
But moving forward, we might not need the whole thing again.
I would say moving forward, the only thing I would see is that we'd do a 12th grade book next year. Just
Right.
because they'll be the last class affected, so we'd do maybe one more year, 2 books, and then that would be it.
I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussions? All right, so pending no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so this has now become an action item. So then I would entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve the registration guide for grades 11 and 12 for the 2021 school year with the minor corrections that need to be someone combing through it.
I have a motion on the floor. I have a second.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? And just highlighting again, what are the if you were only doing the one pager, the changes would be again.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, that's fine.
I'd have to look back at Matthew for the courses that we all updated.
Film
Theory,
studies.
film studies.
Theory.
Well,
was all
yeah,
in the-
I mean, there's
Yep,
there's
it was all in
yeah.
the thing from our
Yep.
work session.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we saw it at the last
Yes.
time.
So we've seen it.
Yep,
And the reformatting
Yep.
and
Right.
those things that had to happen.
yep. Any further discussion?
And if it does help, Matthew and I did talk that we'll be providing, we've done this every year, just for incoming 9th grade, where we've given them a folder and a packet. We'll be doing the same thing for 9th and 10th grade. And Matthew is ordering IB materials to go in there, so there'll be a packet for both 9th and 10th grade this year as well.
Okay. Any further discussion? Got a first and a second. All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Passes, carries, thank you. All right, next agenda item.
My goodness, it's just
what I was thinking, just from a time management perspective, I thought if we could get to 8C, maybe then we'll take a quick break. Does that work?
Very good.
Okay. All right, counseling secretary position.
Sure. I put this on the agenda as an action item. And I kind of don't know how we got here. So I'm going to try to explain what I think I know about the counseling position. 2 years ago, prior to the levy, well, leading up to the last vote a year ago, over the course of the years leading up to it, we had scaled back and cut back on a lot of our personnel throughout the district. And one of those cutbacks involved the secretaries throughout the district. They were reduced back an hour, and there were some other cuts. After the vote, areas got restored. Our secretaries got their hour back, and at that time, well, let me back up. 2 years ago, there was a secretary that was 0.5 counseling office, 0.5 athletic office. It was a full-time position, but it was shared between the two departments. Well, when the levy passed and the secretaries were restored, the secretary that was sharing that position, 0.5, went full-time to the athletic department, which left a 0.5 in the counseling office that was really never restored at that time. There was a subsequent conversation that occurred between Matthew and the IB coordinator that we were going to combine the position, the 0.5 counseling position, with an IB secretary. We hired somebody and just we're in a transition again with trying to hire another secretary. But that experience in trying to find somebody that it wasn't a good marriage, and I don't know how we got there, where the other positions were restored and the counseling office was not restored. It was as if it was a 0.5 position before the vote, and it continued to be a 0.5 after the vote. So had a conversation with Matthew regarding his needs in the IB arena, and he's looking at hiring something more true to what was in the grant, which was kind of not necessarily a clerical position, but more of a coordinator position to help with the personal project, to help with the CAS project. And so what this is asking for is to restore the counseling office secretary to a 1.0, which I believe, and again, you'll have to tell me in terms of the history of the district, there was a full-time secretary at one point, and then over the course of the cutbacks, it was reduced down to a 0.5, and then of course shared with the athletic department. And so now we're just hoping to restore the counseling office position to a 1.0.
Yeah, and I think part of the conversation, and I'm digging back in my archives, is around the funding source. And so I believe that one of the considerations when we, as a board, talked about some of these positions, and again, this is my recollection, the intent was that counseling would become whole in some capacity, and that, likely some of the work might be perhaps related to IB as well, thinking of what we just looked at, right? Registration guides and all of those that require clerical support and whatnot. And so the FTE might perhaps be offset, some of it. And I don't, I think there was a recognition, at least in my mind, that the counseling was intended to be made whole for the needs of the counseling and guidance department, of which one would imagine IB is an element of it.
Correct.
From all of the things that the counseling team needs to do as a result of that. But so I'll add that. So the request is that sounds like you've done a needs assessment discovered that really there is a true need, continued need, which I think we knew that there was a need before, for counseling secretary to be full-time in that capacity, and that there might be a different need or skill set for the IB work, of which would be supported by the grant. But that's the request in front of us today. Do you have any other comments, Kevin, based on, or Jessica, based on history?
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm good.
Good. Any questions, group, as it relates to this?
What would be the approximate financial impact to the general fund?
Well, it's funny you ask. I did ask Cher, excuse me, I did ask Cher, and she has estimated, this is Cher's estimation, 20,985. Approximately.
How many odd cents?
So 2985.
Like 30, around 30-ish.
I said, Cher, really not 21? Nope. 2985, approximately. That's what it would take to restore.
20,900.
So as a superintendent role, right? Because you were close, because you're at the high school, you saw what the counselor department needed. Taking that hat off and doing it as a superintendent budget-wise role, does it make sense? I mean, do we have the resources? I know we've spent more than we were, I know we've spent our fair share of money this year getting this thing, make things happen. Is this a financially wise thing to do?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I have not had a chance to thoroughly look at the budget at this point and to look at the different line items. However, from a practical point of view, we have almost 500 students in this high school, and to not have a full-time counseling secretary in the counseling office to service our students on an ongoing basis, it is a challenge. Over the past several months, the gal who was serving in that capacity would have to leave the counseling office and go to another space, and it did make it challenging. So from a practical point of view, it does make sense, especially, again, we only have one counselor serving
That number of students.
that number of students, and I can't remember what the recommended number is, but I want to say it's, pardon?
411 to 1 is the national recommended average for counselors.
Oh.
The only reason I know that is I just did a presentation for the state of Kentucky, and the National School Counseling Association recommends 411 to 1.
Interesting. Okay.
That's a round off number as well.
It's an estimation.
Not 412.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just know that. So Kevin, to your point, when you ask for a vote, please ask for abstentions also. But we have a healthy fund balance right now. Now. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? This is an action item. I would entertain a motion if anyone would like to put one on the table.
I think I will. I will make a motion that we increase from the half FTE to full 1.0 FTE for the Rockford High School Counseling Secretary position as proposed.
Great. I have a first, I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? I think the one further discussion that I would just add is, I don't know how the grant is written. And if it does give any flexibility to offset the cost incurred for any clerical burden associated with IB that might be, weighted on the guidance office, I would just ask for that consideration, as I think that might have been part of the original intent as well. not changing the reporting structure or accountability, if you will, to counseling department. However, if there's a way to help the general fund balance by using the grant fund in that scope, that's my only thing that I would just add out there, as that's considered. So,
With that being said, next year, half our kids are on that IB track.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
half of the kids in the counseling office would be in there, so.
Yeah.
If there's any way to.
Yep. All right.
Ron, I want to apologize. I misspoke. The state is 411 to 1. The national recommendation is 250 to 1. My fault. My fault. I had three numbers in my head.
I did give you a look, but I wasn't gonna call you out.
No, I had three numbers in my head because Minnesota's a lot higher than that too.
400? That doesn't sound
250.
right, but you know
Yeah,
what? I'm gonna
it was in my head, and I got three numbers, and that was it. So 250. My apologies.
So I have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Does anyone need to abstain from voting? Mr. Gorby? Fair. All right, at this point in time, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And then abstention?
Aye.
All right. Very good. Passes. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, next agenda item, we'll just, again, like I said, we'll try to get through a couple more and then we'll take a brief break. Sharon, would you be willing to come up and present the approval of the final levy?
Are we taking a break or no?
Which you just presented to us earlier this evening.
Yes, so a motion will need to be made to approve the final levy as presented in the Truth in Taxation. Total levy is $7,893,362.10.
10 cents.
I love her.
So cute.
We like our details,
That's
right,
affirmation
Sharon?
of
We
why.
like our details. We like our details.
She's mine.
That's affirmation of why someone like you is in that role.
That's right, that's right. All right, so, I would entertain a motion. This is a roll call, because it's a resolution, actually, yeah.
I'll make a motion for the approval of final levy.
All right, I have a first, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we will go to roll call. Jessica Johnson?
Aye.
Eric Gordy?
Aye.
Beth Kraska?
Aye.
Kevin Campbell?
Aye.
Brady Anderson?
Aye.
Amy Edwards? Aye. Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is our business manager's report.
Yep, this is a report for the month of November. And if we go to the enrollment, if you look in the second column, this is the 18-19. We are very close to the final number count, student count. They actually finish in January, but I don't foresee that much difference. So it was ending at 1,637. If you look at the prior year, we actually went down by 50 students. But third column over, we're currently at 1,647. The good news is we jumped up about 10 from the end of last year, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain that. The key will be watching right now at the first year of IB. We do not have any historical data. So the key will be watching the next 2 years or so to see what we bring in and how we're going to be able to sustain that. Okay. The next page is the revenue and expense summary. 42% of the way through the fiscal year and 25% of the way through the school year. For our percentage of expenditures is with 30%, which is right in between those, and last year was 27, so we're very comparable, right on track. And revenues, 29%, and last year was 30, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
Any questions?
Any questions? No? All right, great.
Thank you.
you.
Beautiful.
All right.
You like looking at those.
I do.
He isn't my green.
He likes the spreadsheets.
Yeah.
That's all good. All right. All right. Moving on. This is, I think I say this a couple times during the agenda, but another highlight of our agenda is acknowledgement of our contributions. And again, it's another month of a very significant outpouring of support that actually goes into 2 pages. Wow. Items like winter clothing for our early childhood general fund. Significant donations to our robotics department, our activities, DECA, cheerleading, soccer, softball, cross country, our general fund, music general fund, food service fund, robotics again, activity scholarships, classroom general funds, science funds, FFA band, and FFA again. And if you just just saying all of those things out loud, or many of the things our kids have access to and exposure to, our students, and that's pretty impressive. And then if you look on the left-hand side and you see anywhere from anonymous donors to large groups like the foundation, to individually named donors, to large groups like the Wells Fargo Foundation, to Boosters Concessions, which are community members that and students that work concessions at home games and you name it, making this school feel hospitable and warm to those that we invite in as well, and make a little in the process that goes back again to all of these programs. So again, just a moment to pause and think gratitude, right, for all of this. And each month it blows my mind, and it's just so powerful to look at it. So,
Amy.
And gratitude. Yes, Jessica?
One thing I just wanted to point out is we're seeing several donations for robotics, and in the past they had one donor that held and they need $5,000 to go with robotics, and the donor this year decided to spread it out, and so they got a much smaller donation, and so they got all these donations that put them above where they've been in the past, so they're really excited about where they're at for robotics this year. So amazing to have all these wonderful donations from these different people and programs, and so pretty cool.
Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. Any other comments? Great. Well, this is a resolution to accept the donations as presented. If I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the contributions as listed.
All right, I have a first, I have a second.
I'll second the motion.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, pending no further discussion, this is a roll call resolution, a roll call vote. I'll start at my left. Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Yep.
Beth Preska.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. Resolution passes unanimously. All right, so this is where it's 9 o'clock, so I'm just doing a check-in. Do we want to take a brief break? Do we want to push through? Where are you guys at? You break? Then you'll have to make the motion, Jessica.
Where are you guys?
We can do 10 minutes.
We can vote you down.
Yeah, you can vote me down. That sounds great. I'll make a motion for a 10-minute
10-minute
recess.
Okay. I have a motion for a 10-minute recess. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a first and a second. Any discussion? We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. We are adjourned for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 9:10. All right. We'll call the school board meeting back into session. It is 9:10. Present are all members as noted at the beginning of the meeting, the full board. So we are back in session. So the next agenda item is the final reading of select policy revisions. This is an action item. And we, reviewed these policies at the last meeting, had an opportunity to provide feedback and whatnot. I would entertain a motion if there's no discussion off the gate.
I'll make a motion that we approve the selected MSBA recommendation policy revisions.
All right, I have a first, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Pending no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. And again, thank you, Kathy, for keeping all of these on our radar and getting them in front of us and having them all
More will
updated.
be there next month.
I have no doubt. Yes, thank you. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Rhonda to present this item.
Yes. Well, I kind of don't know how the ACT test got on the academic calendar. It's really something, in my opinion, shouldn't be on the calendar, but we are moving to an online delivery of the ACT this year, and it's on a different date. And so we're just really asking permission to move the date, and probably in the future we will not put the ACT on the calendar. So similar to the MCAs, I mean, there's a window of time, and we'll work with our teachers in terms of what dates we administer the exam. So it's not appropriate to be on the district calendar.
All right, any discussion on this? Any questions?
So I'm
Yeah.
can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So they would have school on the ACT day? That's what I just need clarification, because here it looked like they weren't going to have school.
Those were not testing.
So only the ones that were testing?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. But now, because...
It's just a regular school day.
Right. Thank you for clarifying, and that's wonderful.
Any other questions? All right, this is an action item. Can we take a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the 1920 academic calendar update.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries, thank you. All right, so this is our next agenda item is our interim superintendent follow-up discussion, I would say, from our work session. And at our work session, we talked about 3 options for placing or for considering interim superintendency. One, we could do a search. Another, we've got a temporary interim. We could talk about an appointment. 2, we could look at a pool of superintendents that might be out there interested in perhaps working in the district. We had a robust discussion as a board, and we left each other to kind of go about our ways and do some thinking and thought around that. And this is time for us to come together and have a conversation and action, likely, or perhaps, about what our next steps will be. We did have an opportunity to have some conversations with community members, and I think everybody probably did in your own ways. Had an opportunity to connect in with our DAT leadership team, which is a district administration team. Had an opportunity to connect in with our union leaders as well, just to talk about kind of where we're at, and then also long-term planning as well. Yeah, any further thoughts around that or questions around that? Kevin or Brady? Yeah.
Any ability to summarize for the board members that weren't present the conversations with, or any conversations with community members, with the DAT team, with the union leadership? Any summaries I think would be helpful to the group.
Either way, I can go. I guess
Okay.
The pieces that I have been pleased with, so we met with the DAT team. I'll speak with the DAT team.
And maybe keep it,
Yeah, higher level, yeah. And the pieces, and actually I'll just go broad across the whole spot, is, and this is not a review, right? Because we don't review people in a open board meeting. I will say, Rhonda has earned the respect of many of her peers, and many of those in the community. So as we talked about the different options, and as we shared the 3 options with the community, one of the options we talked about was removing the temporary part of the interim and continuing with Rhonda until the end of the school year, and conducting a search and being all part of that. And for the most part, I would say that was received really, really well. And that's where it's not a review, but I would say that Rhonda has earned the respect of her peers in the community. And that was evident across each of the 3 organization conversations that we had.
Yep. And I would add, perfect. And I would also add some of, like when we talk about characteristics, there were feedback around knowing people, being embedded, managing through change, all of those sort of things, knowing the community, knowing what Rockford is all about. And the majority of the conversations came out as something that was really, really important for the interim role. Yeah. Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, super helpful.
So I would make a motion, if possible.
You can.
I would make the motion that we remove the temporary timeline from the temporary interim superintendent from Rhonda, and have her serve as the interim superintendent through the remainder of the school year, as we then start a full search process for our next superintendent.
So that's motion number 1. All right.
Yep.
All right. I have a motion on the floor. So do I have a second to that?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to state that hearing the words from community, from our stakeholders, from our staff and everything, that they're seeing what we're seeing speaks volumes. So I am very thankful that you guys took time to do this. Thankful that we're hearing these good things and that we are looking ahead in the right direction. So thank you for going the extra mile and reaching out to these people. And I'm excited for this.
All right, Brady.
Yeah, thank you for all that extra work. I think, because I know that, some of the conversation that we had in the work session, I think is relevant to just mention in the general meeting here. I think really the continuity is key. Having that steady hand at the helm is super important. Having that inside knowledge of the district, super important. You guys already hit on that stuff. I think from a managing taxpayer money and spend, doing 2 searches versus doing 1 is inherently more expensive. So I think it's a prudent move in that regard as well. So that it's the financial side of things. I think from the human side of it, yes, around even moving forward, bringing continuity, And I think moving forward is the key, and that's what we need to do as a district here, is moving forward. And yep, so that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. I will say that I'm very glad that we were able to reach out to stakeholders. It was evident in our meeting this afternoon, early evening, that the leadership of the union was very happy to have this conversation. And we talk about being clear and open with decision making and how we work, not just making it, not just doing. So that communication, that engagement with stakeholders is vital. And I think it was evident that they were appreciative, almost shocked that we actually engaged before we had this conversation. So I'm grateful that this board is able to move forward in that direction and continue going forward.
The other thing that I'll just note in addition to that is, Rhonda's been a school administrator since 1997 in varied capacities of leadership, and moving into this interim superintendency, I've also witnessed Rhonda reach out to peers as well. So part of being a good leader is knowing when you know, and when you rely on your peers to help you. And that's what we see all over, in education, and people reaching out to one another to help each other. And that's been, I want to add that to it too. We don't always have everything in our toolkit in the moment, but we always know that we can reach out and have that peer support network as well. So I just add that in there as well. Great. So we've got a motion on the floor. We've got a second. We've had some discussion. Any further discussion, or are we ready for a vote? Great.
Question. So if we vote to remove temporary from interim superintendent and everything, and it passes, and Rhonda says, great, yep, let's rock and roll. And we've said that doing both roles is really tough. Do we have, is it time then to discuss an interim principal at the high school?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what we would do is leave it up to the superintendent to then, the interim superintendent, to manage the district and to determine what the high school needs.
Okay.
So then it would be in that person's duties and rights to make those decisions. And I think we were talking about this a little bit in this meeting, that if the vote goes to go with Rhonda, then we likely might want to do a second vote tonight, just to clarify that we would want the superintendent to, vacate, or, to work on filling the needs of the high school, if that makes sense. So we probably do that as our second action or business in this. But thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Yep.
And this might, now we brought in another question, and then, we have 4 days left before the break. And so that might be I didn't think about that, but do we do that immediately? Or do we, and bring a sub-principal in tomorrow? Or do we, how does that piece work? Are we asking for an interim principal to continue to serve as both the interim superintendent and high school interim until? Okay.
Yeah, that's how I would imagine
It's up to her.
would look. Yeah.
It's up to her.
Yep.
It's in her wheelhouse.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. Great. So with the first motion that we have on the floor, are we ready for a vote? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, congratulations. And
Go ahead.
Yep.
I want to say this part because Amy and I came to you right away and asked you to serve in a temporary role. And I just want to say thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Thank you for stepping up in a difficult time for our district, and we appreciate all that you have been doing as you've been wearing 2 hats.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Right here.
Well, all of a sudden I lost my voice. No, thank you. Thank you, the board, for giving me an opportunity. I have a lot to learn, absolutely. But thank you for mentioning that I've been an educational leader for over 20 years. I have a network of leaders to lean on, both the principalship, superintendents. I've actually reached out to a couple of superintendents over the past several weeks, starting with the snow day. They were all like, ring, ring, ring. Nobody else was in session, so that didn't work. But I reached out. But I'm real encouraged about the future. So thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you for accepting this position in the district. And I'll just add one more thing. You know, in the 2 months that you've been wearing both hats, we did have a snow day in November. We had a water main break in the district and had to, Mr. Lure was up all night with that. And I think, but the ability to manage that and those crises in the midst of wearing 2 different hats and all of those sort of things is really important. So I do call that out. You've been in the temporary interim, but a couple things have happened. And also just being present at so many events and for the community, that was also noted.
Well, being involved with the events, that's the easy part of the job. Really, truly, that's the best part of the job. But in terms of managing those things that have happened over the past few weeks, it's really the leadership team that is already established in this district. I mean, I just looked in the back of the room and Jim is still there. But I reached out to my colleagues and everyone stepped up and did what they knew to do in that situation. So really it's a testament of the leadership that's in Rockford area schools, including you. The board, and Amy, I've reached out to you several times, texting you at 2 o'clock in the morning. By the way, the high school might not be open tomorrow. What do you think about that? But responding to those texts every day, Monday through Sunday, at any time. Thank you for that, and thank you for the rest of the board for your encouragement.
Great. All right. So then our next agenda item, or next part of this, I think, just to make sure we're clear as to what we voted upon for the high school part of the job. So we just said we'd like Rhonda to remove the temporary was the motion. And now we need to address the part of her role that's the high school, not address it like we would say what to do about it, but just to make it clear that we would expect Rhonda to develop a plan to then have a principal in the high school, so that she's not wearing 2 hats. Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to allow interim superintendent Dean.
She is.
The opportunity to create a plan to address the current vacancy of high school principal at Rockford High School.
I'll second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Pending no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that's that. Communications. Mr. Gordy.
We also need to now look at
Her contract.
Contract.
Yep.
So
that'll
looking
be
for the board to authorize the opportunity for the negotiations team to reconvene to create proper compensatory model for our superintendent.
Yep, sounds good. And then I think that would also include looking at the language around the dual role too.
Correct.
And removing that as well.
And I just also, before we close this out, I know administration is an easy target frequently when budget concerns come to be. It's always easy to blame and to pick on highest paid people, whatever. But I think what our interim superintendent has shown is how incredibly lean we are in our administrative ranks. Even serving just as high school principal, the leanness of that operation, the volume of students at the elementary level with one administrator in that area is something I truly believe our leadership team should address to us eventually. I'm just pointing that out. I mean, it's evident to many. And I think that's something that we need to consider in the very near future.
All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to direct our negotiations team to relook at that contract, just to formalize that?
I'll make a motion for the negotiation team to develop a contract that fits the new duties.
Great.
For
All right.
the interim superintendent.
All right, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a
Pointed
first?
at me, so sure.
I was just thinking.
I agree it
maybe
needs
not
to be done.
Maybe not our negotiations
Yes.
team. And again, just for the record, our negotiations team in this matter is Jessica Johnson, Eric Gordy, and Kevin Campbell. So all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Wonderful. So there gives that authorization to then satisfy the contract and work with interim superintendent Dean in that capacity. The next agenda item is we'll just want to make sure that we have a prompt communication out to our staff and to our families for sure related to this. I don't have a prepared statement at this point in time, but perhaps that's something that if you'd be willing to look at it in the morning, we can send it all out on behalf of the board to everybody. Kathy, are you working in the morning tomorrow? Okay. Would you be able to partner with me on that? Or
Sure,
we
that
can
would be
talk
great.
offline, or you guys can, just so that we get that communication out for this announcement, so that everybody knows.
She is.
She is. All right. Very good.
She's is.
Yep. So then, all right. Anything else before I move out of agenda item related to the interim superintendent? Oh, yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add in that part of this is solidifying the interim superintendent roles, which I know Kevin talked about in the motion and in the discussion. This is to stabilize the district right now. Making sure that people are wearing one hat, not two, for big roles. And as we talked about at the work session, we would also then start to embark upon, a full superintendent, transparent search process.
Do we need a motion for that to move ahead, or do we need to wait till? I mean, I'm just thinking, if we need a motion for that, do we wait till a January meeting, or do we do one right now to just? Or do we have to have a motion to do it? Because if we do, I'd say we just right now just.
Okay.
I don't know if we need a motion for that.
Yeah.
Do we have a work session coming
Well,
prior to our next one?
Nope. We have an organizational meeting and then board meeting.
January 6th.
right. And in our organizational meeting, can we add? We can only do what's on the thing, right?
Organizational meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless you want to have a meeting after that
Oh, okay. So we could tack it on if we wanted to.
as a separate
As
meeting.
a separate meeting, yeah, okay. So that's an option too. There's a bunch of options. I think when we think about search and those sort of things, those are things that you tasked us already with a motion in working with MSBA and kind of some of those sort of things. I think what we could do is bring back, and work with Kathy, because Kathy's done it before as well, but also our, some of our governing bodies out there, around ways to approach it and bring that back to the board, because searches have costs. There's different search firms out there. There's multiple different ways to do it. It might dovetail, go ahead, Kevin.
And I even think as we do our new organizational meeting, it might make sense to, this year we had a separate committee that was kind of the, I've lost the word, but just a committee at large, right? Ad hoc committee. It might be wise to go, let's look at the things we're assigning to, and maybe it's not a negotiations even piece, but it's just the search process. Or so I think we're gonna head down that way. It's been talked about here and then also at the work session. But it might make more sense to go, let's wait to decide how we're doing that, or which people are doing that, or what, how that all looks.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with. I just wanted to make sure that we're not.
No, I don't think we're slowing anything. No, and I think there's a fair amount we can talk about, and make sure that we're together as a group. We can still collect information about how other districts have done it, and some of that legwork. But I don't know that we would make a decision without another conversation at the board level as to how we would proceed. So, yeah. Thanks for asking. All right. Good. And then I know one of the things we talked about too in our first, we can talk about that in our committee updates. All right. So next, moving on to our next agenda item. 10A. Board organizational meeting, which we just talked about, is January 6th at 6:30 p.m. in the Heritage Room at the high school, and that is where we set our committee assignments and all of those sort of things for the year. So there's that. Do we want to add a work session or anything to that? And I'm just asking because otherwise we'd have to put a special notice out or do something between now and then. Jessica.
So I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
And at our work session, we had discussion around future, things that the board would like to discuss. And being that it's an organizational meeting, it's just board related. So, would that be an opportunity for us to have a work session as well to kind of look at our direction as a board and possibly discuss that search as well for a superintendent? Just have a board work session following the organizational meeting.
We can.
Like we were talking about, format of board meetings or something that we could discuss different things that we had talked about at the work session.
Yeah, and I think at the organizational meeting, from a practical perspective, what we would be having, maybe not that, but we would have, we talked about an updated calendar, so we talked about maybe doing different structure for how we meet as a board, maybe having more work sessions peppered into the new year. Not doing it the same way because we have had a decent amount to talk about. And when we talk about it in a work session, then our regular meetings go nice and smooth. So there's a little bit of that. And I know Kathy has been working on, or had talked about working on putting together kind of what that might look like for then us to take a look at. Of course it's already done. And so that would be then presented to us at the organizational meeting. Because that's where we approve all of those sort of things. So from a structure perspective, that would be there.
Okay. And the work session might not be that long, but it would be nice to have the opportunity that it's already out there, just in case we need it.
Okay.
All
right.
In work session is we talk about things that we put on the agenda only, correct? So what are the things that we need to put on that work session? So that's where we're having the conversation.
Okay. We don't have to decide that tonight, though.
Just have to
Just
post
have
it.
to-
By the time we have the agenda, we do. By the time we have the agenda out.
Yeah, but like normal, we would still plan it, and we wouldn't, at this point in time, if it was a special session, we would have to, or something that we hadn't. So, All right, so then I guess I have a request to, what I'm hearing is a conversation around adding a work session to January 6th, following the organizational meeting. Topics to be determined, perhaps likely related to how we want to carry on our business as a board as one of the possible topics. All right, so I would need a motion in order to do that.
I'll make a motion to add a work session after the January 6th school board organizational meeting.
Okay, I have a first, I have a second.
I'll second that. Sorry, looking at my calendar.
Moved on. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion around adding a work session so it's on our books should we need it? No further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Wonderful. All right, next agenda item is the MSBA Leadership Conference. That's January 16th through the 17th. That's probably what you were looking at your calendar for. Kathy, when do you need our registrations by?
Preferably before break.
Oh, okay. So
mine's in.
Yours is already in. Okay, great. You're in. You're
Those
in.
3 are done.
Side of the room. All right. Good job.
And you need to know we're going, right? That's
Yes.
what you need.
Okay.
Brady, it's a really good conference.
Oh yeah, I was there last year.
Oh.
Yeah, it's good.
We were all there last year.
Yeah, we were. I'm just gonna look really quick.
That's right.
I
You
have
guys
to
see
leave
what
early
it's
because I'm heading to Dawson, but I figure I can take all 3.
Yeah.
Is Thursday the all day?
Yep.
Yes.
All the district's paying for is your lunch on Thursday, so if you register and you don't go Friday, we're not losing any money. So it isn't one day, it's either the conference or not the conference.
Yeah, I'll go to the conference.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going.
I can't.
Nice to meet you, Kathy.
I'll be out of town.
Brady, are you going?
Yeah, I'm planning.
I'm going
on
Thursday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So it sounds like the full board will be able to go.
Superintendent.
Hopefully,
Interim
superintendent will also be able to join us at that
Awesome.
conference. All right, next agenda item is the regular meeting of the Board of Education, Wednesday, January the 22nd. The reason it's Wednesday the 22nd is because of the school closure and holiday on Monday, the 20th. So it's a Wednesday night meeting. Any concerns with that? All right. Next. Moving on to board committee updates. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. All right.
Thank you.
So several meetings related to the delegate assembly going on where we vote on positions for MSBA. There were 28 objects that went through. There was a pre-delegate assembly, a couple webinars that are associated to where that position is going. So some of the bigger thing, you know, and y'all got an email about the proposed thing. Big body, right? And it's an interesting process. And Rhonda has the document with all of the provisions. And yes, there's 28 of them. What's interesting is you get this thing on the top, there's a summary, and then MSBA's recommendation of how you should vote. Yeah. So some of these things, right? But anyway, so some of the big ones that, I mean, so you don't have to look at it. That one-time safety allocation that they had for 2019, they're looking at trying to make that permanent.
Yeah.
They want to do that.
I remember that from last year.
Yep, so they're doing that. There was a large discussion from some of the large districts about the ability to direct certify kids for free and reduced meals. What that means is the family doesn't have to fill out any paperwork to be able to be certified for free and reduced meals. So they could just go in and say, we're all free and reduced without any real.
So
yes.
What tab is that?
Like 2 or 3. Yeah. So that was a big thing to be able to direct certify a student for free and reduced meals just on district discretion.
Is that to save family?
No, well,
from those. I mean, to allow those who are, for whatever reason, not doing it, to empower them to do it?
They're not, so it's to allow the district to count to kids so they don't have to fight they don't have to continually encourage and work to get this paperwork properly filled out.
We have some of the data already that.
Absolutely, right? But, so there's either ways on this that you can think about it.
Can I ask about that? Wouldn't that help with the testing for IB
And then help with title funds.
Yeah. So, okay.
So then the ability, with our co-op agreements with ASECO and different things like that, to improve those facilities, right? There was some conversation to be able to utilize lease levies for helping pay for those non-district owned areas, but to be able to, and to pay and to help with those things. That was a good one. This one failed terribly where they, like counties, don't have to go out for bond referendum. They can just raise the levy. That one failed miserably. They were saying, should we be able to do that? The answer is no, loudly. They want to support the repeal of the fair share provision of contracts for union. They want to be able to do have districts do a pilot for substitute teachers where they don't need a 4-year degree in order to be a substitute teacher in a district. Because right now Minnesota is one of only a handful of states that require a BA or BS to substitute. So,
I think a lot of that's 2 years. Like in Indiana, you can sub. Like, so then what you do is you get a lot of people that are working towards their teaching degree. I used to sub in Indiana a lot. Yeah.
So there was the continued support for local controls for standards and curriculums and graduation requirements. Great conversation about the ability to expand up to 10 e-learning days a year rather than the 5.
Negotiations.
2 interesting ones that really conflicted with each other. This first one was, it failed, but they wanted to reduce the regulation on required seat time for earned credit, being able to have experience, job experience, standards-based education, to be proficient in this, to test out. They don't necessarily have to have the minutes in the class, but you can show proficiencies and move on. That failed. But on the other side of it, they decided to have expansion of the youth skills training program, which allows for students to do job-embedded experience during the school day for high-need job areas. So that passed as a thing, but the seat requirement, like, okay, so they're whatever. And then allow a pilot for districts to explore an opportunity besides MCAs for standardized tests.
That's interesting.
I figured that would get you guys booked a little bit on that one.
Wow.
So that was that. So that took up quite a bit of time. Those are my meeting times. I also did a couple webinars with MSBA with the organizational meeting and some truth and taxation meetings as well.
Say the last one again, because I was thinking processing as you said it. Just say it one more time.
Districts have the ability to you can apply to be a pilot district to explore an option instead of utilizing the MCAs.
Thank you.
So in the resolutions that passed, or no, so what does it mean when you say they passed?
So the resolutions then means this is on the legislative agenda for MSBA to utilize their lobby to talk to people to say, this is what we think is good.
Got it.
So it's like,
so it's nothing that's real yet, but we'll push. We have MSBA pushing behind those things to hopefully get it into some type of legislation. So there's that.
All right, Jessica, would you like to go next?
Yep. Not quite as long. All right, so 2 negotiations meetings I've attended. Masiko Meet and Confer I just attended this last week. Our work session, and then a great musical. I got to attend all 3. Ace Kevin. And the Christmas high school choir concert.
Nice.
Got to attend that too, so that was great. That's mine in a nutshell. So there you go.
Nice. Great. Beth, do you have any updates?
I went to the C General Membership meeting,
And they always have 2 speakers, and it's just like this. We have to approve all the minutes and everything. And one speaker was the school finance overview trends, and that was really, Eric would have liked it, but I thought, okay, that's never enough money. So that sum it up, 10 pages says we need more money. That's all it says. And then the next one was actually really interesting, and I shared this with Kevin Keller. There's the Minnesota Council on Economic Education, and they provide a lot of free professional development. And so I forwarded the information on to Kevin that as teachers could just get free opportunity. And it's not just in economics, it's like social studies more so, I thought. And engaging students, and it reminded me a lot of Best Prep, sort of, but a different take on it.
Sure.
And so that was a nice resource. So if you would like information on it, Rhonda, I can dig it up, but I did share it with Kevin because I thought it was good for our teachers. And I will give all this to Kathy. Let me see my notes. So back to the school finance part. Focus on sped cross subsidy. That's where they're moving because see, that's their thing. They want more.
Yep.
And being careful with that though, because when you take money from one pot, you take it away from them. So it's a bit of a domino effect. And they'd also like to create a school finance where you wouldn't have to levy in the future, which is, like I said, there's not enough money. And also maybe bumping up the EL funding. So that's kind of, C is going to be going to the legislative with these ideas. And let me see. So we lost money per student due to inflation. So that, as we know, the general formula is not keeping up with inflation. And the C Day at the Capitol is on Tuesday, March 17th. It's
St. Patrick's Day. Oh, St. Patrick's Day in St. Paul.
And
That's
it's-
going to be fun.
Yeah, so,
Nice.
I mean, that might be, maybe we can stick that on our next, at the end,
Yeah.
March 17th.
Good idea.
And,
I have
and Deb, who is the, I don't know what her title is.
Griffin.
Yeah,
she's
the person, the C person. She's not the
connect
head.
person, the people.
She
Yeah.
will come out and present to a community, and she engages with parents and community. So I thought, hey, maybe that's something we want to look into. I don't know any more details. I thought if that was something we were interested, that we could get more information.
Okay.
And I won't be able to attend the next one. Jessica's already on tap, but I would welcome all of you to attend because the director, like I don't know what her title is, professor of everything at the U that has to do with reading will be speaking.
Oh, cool.
About dyslexia.
Oh,
So
all right.
it'll be a good one.
Nice.
Yeah. That's not really her title. I don't know what her title is, but
Director of everything.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Dr.
Everything reading.
Everything reading.
Yeah.
Great update. All right, Brady, any updates?
Not a lot. We have a community advisory committee meeting this Thursday. Otherwise, just a lot of taking in some of the events of the district. Concerts, middle school band concert, elementary, kindergarten concerts. Lots of sporting events. So, yeah, seeing you there.
Yes, that's right. Yes, Kevin?
Couple conversations with community stakeholders, right? Or planning this meeting, so some agenda setting stuff, teachers negotiations as well. It's kind of the pieces that have been, so. And I'll say, December's an awesome time to be a parent in our school district. Like there are a lot of fun things going on, and like to watch, we went to the play, the musical, to hear the Christmas concert, to go and watch top teams in basketball, and not only that, but like the activities that happen after the activity happens. It's a lot of fun. And there's so many things going on right now that it's kind of cool to see the energy, and so it's been fun as a parent, which is why I got on the school board in the first place, right? Is because I want to be vested in what's going on here, and so it's been fun to have the fun activities along with the business of the board. So, yeah.
Nice. Could not agree more with that statement. Spent, unrelated to school board, I spent almost the entire weekend at Rockford High School. Over the weekend, there was a 80-team basketball tournament. So spent 5 hours in concessions volunteering in the afternoon, and watched some basketball in the morning, and that was Saturday, and then Sunday, same thing, concessions first, then basketball. But again, unrelated to my role as a board member, super cool to see so many families coming into our district and just talking about what, number one, what great kids we have. So teams, coaches, parents, so heard a lot about that. Heard a lot of really great comments on what a nice host facility we are, and how people are kind and accommodating, and there's a reason why those tournaments get 70 to 80 teams, both girls and boys. I'm speaking in this instance of basketball, was the one that was hosted last weekend, and then add in the Community Expo. So walked through that, saw Melissa Joseph, who was present both days, and again, just the excitement and buzz in the community, and being able to showcase this. And I was exhausted by Sunday night, but boy, how cool was it? Anyway, so I love that. Brady, you were there too. Just a great experience. As far as board business, similar to Kevin, agenda setting with the new interim superintendent now, Ms. Dean. Also have been engaged in negotiations with our teachers, and so we've been meeting on a pretty nice cadence about every other week to keep the business going forth under Rhonda's leadership as well. And then, let's see, had some community conversations and district conversations as directed by this board to do. I went to the Association of Metro School Districts, and that's actually the update that I wanted to provide most with you. That was on December the 6th, and we had two senators there, a Democrat and a Republican. It was Senator Paul Anderson and Senator Greg Clausen, one from the Apple Valley area, one from the Plymouth area. And it was great because it gives you an opportunity to speak up should you so choose, and I did. And so just highlighted, living in a property poor district. And again, every year, we go to the state capitol with our box of pizza and talk about unfair funding, and just talked about, by definition, right, we have an inequitable way that we service kids, and asked them if they had any sort of a roadmap for that or plan. And Rhonda was there too. I did not hear that they necessarily did, because the problem with this predicament is that it gets stuck, right? It's either is it an education deal or is it a finance deal? And so sometimes then it becomes nobody's deal, right? And we all know this. This is what we have the opportunity to lead through. They did suggest that possibly this would be on the governor's agenda, though, to really look at this. And they did, one of the senators did suggest that they would maybe see something about stabilizing education funding. But again, that's been one of the problems. Let's see. We did approve the legislative platform, which also had a similar point on, and I'll just read it, expanding the innovation zone law to include more school districts and expand flexibility to encourage initiatives such as allowing a school district to replace the high school MCA with nationally recognized college entrance exam if approved by the United States Department of Education. And so that is also on the MSBA agenda, in addition to increasing diversity. I mean, there's multiple bullet points but behind each of these, but ensuring safe and modern school facilities, increasing diversity in the educator workforce, reduce mandates and enhance local control, and then enhancing taxpayer equity. So those are the top 4 major big buckets, and then you can go on the AMSD website and read it in great detail. All of the meeting minutes, all of the materials are public. You don't need a passcode to get in there. So I actually would encourage this team to go look around on the AMSD website. The other thing that I would like to call to your attention is there was a conference called Building Community Bridges that was hosted by AMSD, and all of the materials are online. So I would encourage you to take a look at those. Yeah, and then I think that's my main updates from that. But yeah, I would really encourage you to take a look at the legislative platform that we endorsed, as well as some of those meeting materials. Rhonda.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for allowing me to serve the district. I, of course, attended several meetings over the past several weeks, Masico meeting, a couple of DAP meetings, AMSD meeting. But what I was actually hoping to do, and again, I don't know how we did this in the past, but what I was hoping to do is to spend my time in terms of, instead of sharing with you the meetings I've gone to, who cares? But more really sharing with you what we're doing in the district. And so I have a list of things here that we're either in the process of doing or we're considering moving forward with. One of them is we just completed a machine shop audit. I think I shared that with you last month, that we're looking at primarily the big machines that were brought in and assessing whether or not they are reasonable for a school setting, and what type of safety mechanisms we need to add to those machines. The big machines as well as some of our other machines. But we've done that safety audit, and now we're just waiting for the report back. We're hoping to, after the first of the year, have a calendar committee. I've already talked to the other 2 principals, and we'll each have a team. We're thinking right now a team of minimum 5 people per building. I mean, Kathy and I have been talking about how to possibly go about in terms of a process. But when I say 5 people per building, we're talking 2 teachers from each building, 2 parents from each building, and then the principal.
Okay.
And then likely have a few at-large folks. That might be like maybe a Kevin Keller who's a K-12, maybe Jessica from Galaxy. But really having a pretty big committee, but sharing then with that committee, and again, we've looked at a process with putting out the parameters that are associated with our calendar, and then talking about what we have to do in terms of the number of days, the number of hours, what's in our contract as it relates to professional development days, but then allowing the teams, the 3 teams, to go back to their buildings and define how some of those, I mean, there's some nuances between how elementary handles their conferences versus how the high school and how the middle school handles a few things within the days that we've defined. And then coming back together and hopefully having 1 or 2 proposals for the board. Our hope is February, but I don't know, that's pretty aggressive. It might come to the board in March. For a first read, so we can vote on it in April. I mean, I'm saying that out loud now, and it's like, oh my gosh, April, that seems like we're cutting it close. That's why the hope was February, but that may be a little aggressive in terms of the timeline. But our intent is to engage the community with the calendar. This calendar is going to be difficult. Just where Labor Day is this year, it's messy. And I've been on a calendar committee before, and what it does is there's not a lot of, people think that there's a lot of options with the calendar, and at the end of the day, there's maybe 3 or 4 days that you can really manipulate. So what having a committee does is it gives you then 20 to 30 ambassadors who are out in the community now, not necessarily, they're again, I would say ambassadors being able to explain the why.
Right.
Like how we ended up with spring break on this week versus that week. So for those people who feel the power of being on a calendar committee, it's really not the power. It's really, again, just knowing the why in terms of why the calendar plays out the way it does. Because again, at the end of the day, there's probably 4 days that you can really manipulate.
I want to, can I just add on?
Sure.
Thank you so much for bringing your perspective to the district and going in that direction, because that's kind of where I'm used to as our background both in Anoka Hennepin. And I think as far as transparency, that it's not top down and you're taking stakeholders, just giving them to be heard goes a long way with the community.
Yeah.
And we all know that there's not that much flexibility, but
nobody else knows that.
Exactly.
Unless you've gone through the process and it's kind of messy. You don't know that. You just think that you can, and then it's getting the 3 levels to agree. That's the other piece of it. So we're going to attempt it. Okay. And hopefully again brings a proposal back to the board in February. Again, that might be aggressive, so it might be March. Safe route to school, not much movement on that in the last month. We're actually waiting to hear back from the safe school
Planning people.
the planning at the state level, so no movement on that. We're getting some traction on the greenhouse at the middle school. So there were a couple of grants that were granted to us. One is a state grant for sure. The other one we don't know for sure if it's a federal grant or not. And then we received some funding from RA. Is it RA? The foundation at 16.5. But there's about $66,000 dedicated to a greenhouse. And I don't know why the project's been kind of put on hold, but it has been. And Dr. Hume Anderson has really taken the lead on reaching out and making sure, the funding sources are still there, relooking at what those requirements were in the grant. And really, she's really taken the lead and moving forward with that. She's working with a vendor right now to design the greenhouse. We've kind of thought we're going to have to backpedal in terms of the type of greenhouse. I mean, when you think of greenhouse, you think of heating and watering, and we want to go in a direction where, it's solar generated. So just expect some movement on that. We're getting some traction on that greenhouse. Our crisis safety team, I don't know if we've talked much about that here, but we have I want to say a district-wide committee where we're looking at our crisis planning. Crisis planning meaning if we have to go into a lockdown. Whether it's an interior lockdown or what we call a soft lockdown. We're even being advised now to be more descriptive when we have a lockdown, to not just get on the PA and say we're having a hard lockdown or a soft lockdown, because if you're a visitor in this building or you're a sub in this building, it's like, what is that?
Right.
What does that mean? So it's getting on the PA and saying, hey, we're having a soft lockdown. That means lock your exterior doors, but you can resume teaching. Versus a hard lockdown where there's a threat in the building. So we're doing some things around that. We're also looking at our communication plan as it relates to that. We have found some some areas that we need to improve on. One specifically that really is a red flag for all of us. And when I say all of us, the principals, our deputies are involved in this committee, Jim Lure, Eric Leander, who is the supervisor of our SROs. One of the things that we have found that our PA system, the only place to put in an all-call is from our offices.
Oh, and what if?
The one kiosk in the office. So I couldn't even sit here or be in my office and hear something happening and put the building in lockdown.
You'd have to run back to the, wow.
And if the main office is
So-
compromised,
And
you can't
before
get
we go into, I just want to make sure that we're not going too deep into any risks.
Yeah.
So if you,
True.
that's all. Just
Yeah.
yep,
We get it.
yep, yep.
so we're looking at, just looking at how we're managing safety in the building. And then a communication plan, because if something were to happen in terms of families descending on the bill, of course they're gonna descend. How we manage that, just the traffic of it, and notifying parents and community members of the happenings, and how we go about we call it unification. So we're continuing to go down that path. You mentioned negotiations. Jim Lord had just notified me just Friday that there was a long-term facilities maintenance study just completed. It was a facility study that looked at the entire district, equipment, building, interior, exterior, roofing, and so we're expecting that report. They just finished that up. And then, of course, we're gearing up for the professional development days in January. The last thing I want to really ask about and get some direction from the board is the strategic plan. I was not involved in the work session when I think the vendors presented. I wasn't involved in those work sessions, and so we did reach back out to Teamworks, the vendor that we've selected, to modify their timeline, and they've done so. And so I just want to make sure that we want to move forward as defined in their new proposal, and just I want to make sure that I fulfill the wishes of the board as it relates to the strategic plan.
Are we able to have that conversation at this time? I don't know.
I don't think we can, right?
Well, they just sent me another agreement.
Yeah, so we'd have to do the other
Of course.
agreement in like an actual
Yeah.
meeting where we can vote on it. If it's a new
So going under
contract.
the original premise,
Because we already
approved to
voted
go
on it.
move forward.
We
so
did, yeah.
Under the discretion of the superintendent, I mean, that's what it said.
That's
That's
true.
what we said. We said under the discretion of the superintendent to move forward with a strategic plan. So it basically comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell us what we should do, so.
See, really, Gordy. Can I say that?
Are you comfortable with the new timeline as presented by Teamworks?
Well, I don't think we can
Yeah.
talk
We
about that
can't?
either, though.
Yeah.
All it's,
Okay.
yeah, so that would be another conversation.
I thought since we
what
already approved
yeah,
it.
We
so-
did.
I mean, you've already approved it, and now there's a new timeline. And again, I just wanted to make sure that,
Yeah, we didn't approve the timeline, we just approved the ability
She
for
can go
you to
forward.
work with that.
So I think
with
what's
that.
happening right now is she's got a new timeline.
Yeah.
She's doing a quick pulse check with the board
Okay.
just to make sure that nothing has changed and that things should go forward or whatnot. I think that's what's happening right now is a pulse check.
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever decision you make, I'm fine with.
And I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed to, let's put it on there and catch up with each other
Mhm.
with the new leadership, and
Mhm.
I think that might be a good thing.
Mhm. In a January work session?
Yeah.
Good. Perfect.
That
So
gets her
put
on
it-
board too.
Huh?
That gets her on board
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it.
So we can talk about that in greater detail at the first, at the work session we
at
just
the work
ended.
session?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's good.
all right.
Yeah,
Nice.
great.
Because again, they're continuing to, you know, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Sign.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
You don't just want to sign your name?
They got a quota.
That's why I wanted to make sure
yeah.
you were, I kind of refreshed it.
Yeah, So
to make
let's
sure you
refresh
had
at the work
everything.
session and talk about it and just have an open dialogue and, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Thanks for,
Thank you.
meeting with them and continuing the conversation with them and asking them to readjust their proposal a little bit, giving some of the feedback. So that's great. Good. All right.
Hoping more for like a rapid planning.
Yeah. All right. Good. So those are the updates. Anything else that you want to update us on?
No.
Good. All right. So then I'm just going to go to sign recognition. I'm just looking for it in my.
Start on that side.
Hold on.
I'll take the band all-stars.
Awesome.
Middle school band all-stars, there's 4 of them.
You got them all.
I'll
Sweet.
take them.
Thank you.
I'll drop those off or have Molly drop them off in the office.
All right, and then Reams Performer for
Need an extra
performing
because I'll screw something up.
in the Nutcracker at the Orpheum.
I'll do that one.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Put it out there.
High school.
That was so cool.
Yep.
That was volleyball.
Well, you don't need to do 80 of them.
So
Women's
high school
volleyball.
music. So the high school musical would
Shared it
be
with me and I said that needs to be on our rocket card.
the high school musical would be one to the group, and then we would do the board, certificates.
I
for
can do the high
people
school musical one.
Awesome, thank you. Coach of the year.
Kathy? What the heck's that?
That's a fun pen. I was waiting for Kevin to look away from his phone to say that he'd do Coach of the Year, but I guess that's not gonna happen. Yeah.
Coach of the year. All right. Thank you,
You
Mr.
want to do a couple of the band
All right.
ones?
All right. Thank you, everybody. With that, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Our business is done for the evening.
I'll make that motion.
I have a first, I have a second.
Second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourned 10:17 p.m.